over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 148, Mental Health Stigma in Teens. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and my intelligent and caring co-host, Madison Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today, Maddie?
Fine, I guess.
Wow, that's a stunning endorsement there. Jeez.
Yeah.
Any issues we need to discuss?
Mainly just, the typical physical stuff,
I see. Understood. Anything exciting at school this week? You did have your band practice canceled this week, so that was interesting.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I had turned in my math project. That was pretty cool.
Now, when do you get graded on that?
Probably after the 27th, because that's when everyone's is due. Like, you turn it in before.
Okay. So tell us about it, because this was an interesting little project you did. I wish we had a copy of it. I didn't think I'd take a picture of it.
True. Basically, it was supposed to be based on a certain geometry topic we had discussed, and I'd gotten special parallelograms.
Right.
So basically, I had to talk about the rhombus, the rectangle, and the square.
And what did you theme yours on?
SpongeBob.
And you did a really good job. I was very impressed with your final product. I really was.
Yeah, I was actually pretty impressed as well.
Hopefully you get a good grade on it. I think you deserve it.
Thanks.
But that is not what we're talking about today. What we are talking about today is that many of our podcasts often conclude with the suggestion to seek professional help if the techniques we discuss on the show aren't effective to you. The actual act of getting that level of help can itself be a challenge. There's long been a stigma surrounding mental health, both in teens and in adults. Thankfully, that has gotten significantly better over the years, but taking that first step to seek help is challenging, and that's what we're going to be discussing on this week's episode of Insights into Teens. But before we do that, I would like to invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Teens, and video as well as audio can be found listed as Insights into Things for all of our podcasts. And we can be found on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, pretty much anywhere you get a podcast these days. I'd also invite our audience to give us your feedback. Tell us how we're doing. Give us your show suggestions. Relate your personal stories. If you've got any personal stories related to the topics that we talk about, we'd love to hear about them. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can find us on Twitter at insights_things. We're on Facebook.com. Insights Into Things podcast. We're also at Instagram.com/Insights Into Things, where you can get links to all those and more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com. Are we ready?
I guess we have to be.
Wow, I love that confidence there.
Thanks.
Here we go. So this research comes to us from a website called destinationsforteens.com. And the first question is really, what is mental health stigma? They say sometimes it can be difficult to spot symptoms of mental health conditions, especially in teens and young adults. While mood changes are characteristic of maturation and puberty, mental health disorders create invasive symptoms that interfere with your daily life.
Without proper treatment, mental health disorders can cause disabling symptoms, which can impact academics, social life, and relationships. Mental health stigma in teens is an unhealthy combination, as fears about reaching out for help can outweigh a teen's desire to get better. Conditions like depression can cause you to isolate yourself from friends and loved ones, while anxiety can make it difficult to interact with others.
20% of teens and adolescents struggle with a mental health disorder. Some of the most common mental health disorders that affect teens include depression and major depression disorder, anxiety disorders, mood disorders, PTSD or post-traumatic stress disorder, and eating disorder.
Mental health stigma and teens struggling with their emotional well-being can create significant barriers to recovery. Since many mental health conditions can get worse without treatment, neglecting emotional needs can make it difficult to live a healthy life. Struggling with depression, for instance, can lead to losing interest in hobbies and avoiding friends and family members.
Teens may also struggle with communicating their emotions, especially if intense emotions occur without a direct cause. Other times, mental health stigma in teens experiencing anxiety can make it hard to reach out for help. Things like expressing difficult emotions or asking for help can trigger anxiety symptoms, which is why it's important to offer support to your teen if they're struggling to find ways to cope with overwhelming or troubling emotions. So, it's worth noting that as a kid, when I was your age, mental health really was not something we talked about. It wasn't in the forefront. It wasn't something that really people addressed to kids unless the kids were, and I'm going to use probably an insensitive term, but this is what we refer to them, they were disturbed. You know, these were the kids who were the ones that they were unable to stay in class with the rest of the group. So they would wind up going off into their own separate study groups. And usually these groups were for kids who had developmental disorders. There was very little talk about some of the more common things that everyone goes through, depression, anxiety, and stuff like that. So when you found out that a friend of yours or someone you went to school with was going for some kind of counseling, the immediate thought was, oh, well, you know, he's got real problems, you know, he's, you know, whatever the term was at the time, you know, he needs to be medicated or they're going to put him in the funny farm. You know, it was all stuff like that because nobody really understood it. And I've noticed nowadays that there's a lot more, at least if not understanding, discussion about it. What's your impression of how kids your age actually deal with these kind of mental health issues? Because depression wasn't a mental health issue. If you were suffering from depression when I was a kid, you were just sad and you had to get over it. And that's really not the case. How is it nowadays in your eyes?
Well, now I kind of see it as a lot of people tend to speak out about it, or they tend to say, like, they have something else going on. And you also tend to see a lot more of mental health disorders getting identified and people relating that they have that. You have people nowadays coming out and saying they directly have depression or they are getting counseling. And like, I definitely think it's a lot more open than, especially when you were a kid. Everyone's a little more open about it. And even if some people don't entirely understand it, again, like you said, people do discuss it more often, and the topic of therapy has been a larger topic. In fact, the largest teen topic we were going to discuss on this podcast at the very start was depression. And, like, it was around the time that I was also kind of having a lot of mental changes, and nowadays people do speak out about it, and it's said that teens do go through this, but that it can lead to something more serious later on.
Yeah, and that's kind of the take that I have on it now is it's treated like, almost like it's a physical ailment, which really it is. It has to be taken seriously like that, and it has to be treated. You have to look at the symptoms. You have to figure out the cause of it, just as if you had an illness or an injury or something like that. And to me, at least, it's a relief to see that people are being a little bit more clinical about it. And it's less, oh, that's like my crazy uncle. We don't talk about him because he's in the institution type thing, where it's like it was a black mark before, where you tried not to talk about it. You didn't want to address it. It was that skeleton in the closet that nobody wanted to address because, oh my goodness, a family member of mine has a mental illness. That means the whole family's going to go crazy. Like, that was really kind of the stigma that we had when I was a kid. So you didn't address it. And nowadays, because it's treated clinically, there's a lot more support out there. There's a lot more help out there. And that's sort of what I want to talk about today. But there's still some stigmas. What are some of the common types of stigma that are still out there?
So this comes from a website called stonewaterrecovery.com. At the core of stigma is a sense of feeling that someone is different from you and that the difference is negative. Common types of public mental health stigmas surrounding adolescent mental health include the misconception that teenagers have nothing to be depressed or anxious about. Teenagers are at a phase in life when they are discovering a lot about themselves. While they might not have gone through a lot in life, that is not reason enough to assume that they have nothing to be depressed about. In any case, teens have to deal with school, friendships, relationships, and even part-time jobs. Because teens experience emotions more intensely than adults, making them susceptible to I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Besides, teens experience emotions more intensely than adults, making them susceptible to developing depression.
Another misconception that they have is that teens with mental health disorders act a certain way just for attention. It can be easy to conclude that a teen is faking a mental disorder and seeking attention. In the real sense, the mental problem may not get the kind of attention that they want. After all, the prevalence of mental health stigmas and misconceptions among teens is less likely to make a healthy teenager pretend to have a mental disorder.
There's also the misconception that teens with mental health disorders are prone to violence. It is possible for someone struggling with mental health disorders to be violent. However, it does not mean that all of those who suffer from mental health conditions are unquestionably violent.
And the last one they talk about is another misconception. I think really this is probably one of the biggest one that's thrown around by parents these days, and it's one you have to be careful about. And that's that teens don't suffer from mental health disorders. It's just moodiness because they're teens. Due to hormonal changes in adolescence, teens are often moody. However, this does not mean that teenagers cannot suffer from mental disorders. When a teenager exhibits behaviors beyond normal teenage moodiness, it could be a sign of a mental disorder. So it's one of those things where it could be moodiness, but you really need to keep an eye on it and make sure that that's all it is. That doesn't mean you just leave them go off to to do their own thing, you kind of have to be there to ask, make sure everything's okay. And sometimes you have to be that annoying parent and kind of feel out the details and see how it is. And what I think is kind of interesting is that all four of these really are misconceptions. So the stigmas that a lot of people have about seeking mental help, are misconceptions. These are things, and some of these are carryovers from when I was a kid, that they're not real. The stigmas aren't based on reality. They're based on some kind of fictitious image we have of either the perception of the teen or the perception of their behavior. What do you think? Do you think any of these stigmas are real, or do you think that, they're things that need to be overcome?
I mean, yeah, a lot of these are things that really need to be overcome, like saying that teens don't have anything to be depressed or anxious about. Well, the amount of stress they get from school, the stress they can get from their parents, and just the overwhelming feeling of them discovering a lot about the world and kind of feeling like and kind of finally learning a lot more of the dark sides about the world. And again, with them being with teens being really having much more intense emotions than adults, yeah, that one really isn't true, because there's a lot of that teens are anxious about. They're anxious about their future. They're told this is around the time where they start to finally decide who they are as a person, and obviously that would end up causing them to be really anxious. They start learning a lot more about the world and realize there's a lot of bad in the world that had kind of been shielded from them until this point.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned that, because we did. One of the big topics that we had talked about, one of the, hard-hitting topics that we talked about early on, was depression. And after we went through depression, we did a series of a bunch of other ones, and I think we just kind of discovered that your depression was, if nothing else, the result of anxiety from various pressures that you were going through at the time, compounded by the mood swings that you were having when you were going through those hormonal changes. So those stresses exist, and they exist for every teen out there. Some teens put more stress on themselves than others. You have some teens who are perfectionists, and they put pressure on themselves because of that. You have teens who are overachievers, who feel that there's a demand for them to produce more. Then you have teens who are the ones that are involved in everything. The kids who are every season they have a different event or multiple events, extracurricular activities that they, participate in. And they're getting straight A's, and they're on honor roll, and they're doing, 5 other things. All of these things, and it's not bad. I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but all of these things generate their own types of stressors that kids are susceptible to. What are some of the stresses that you're dealing with right now, let's say?
Well, I guess a lot of mine is the perfectionist aspect. I stress about getting perfect days. I stress when I have a test and I don't know if I'm going to get 100 on it. And anything less than that, I don't feel like I did well enough. I constantly put pressure on myself to get those straight A's, get the best grades I can. And when I don't, I completely beat myself up about it, and I feel horrible.
Yeah, and every one of those things that you put on yourself is compounded by the fact that school is putting demands on you. Mommy and daddy are putting demands on you. Your friends are putting demands on you. Your extracurricular activities are. And all this stuff causes stress, and stress itself leads to mental disorders. So that's a real danger, and we can't just dismiss it by saying, kids, well, you don't have to put food on the table, and you don't have to put a roof over your head. And it's like, okay, you have different stresses than I do as an adult. It doesn't make them any less of a danger of mental health. So parents have to kind of recognize that even though they're different stresses, there's still stresses that can cause mental health issues.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come back and talk about how mental health disorders are treated. We'll be right back. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're talking about mental health stigma in teens. And now we're going to talk about how mental health disorders are treated, and this comes to us from, pardon me if I botch this, BreeCollegeBehavioral.com.
Sure, that sounds good. It's better than I would have done.
Alright. So when you notice symptoms of a mental health disorder, early treatment is essential. Much like a physical ailment you might suffer from, the first step of the treatment process is obtaining a diagnosis, after which the focus becomes centered on developing an effective treatment plan. Like medical conditions, it can take time to find the right combination of therapies to alleviate and reduce symptoms of a mental health condition.
There are different types of treatments to mental health disorders, from counseling and behavioral therapy to prescribed medication and alternative herbal approaches. It all depends on your diagnosis. Understand that it may take a few attempts to discover which treatments work best. Mental health disorders are usually treated with both medication and therapy. Therapeutic techniques like cognitive and dialectical behavioral therapy work by helping you identify and change negative thoughts, feelings, and behaviors.
Understanding triggers is another important part of recovery. Triggers can be people, places, or things that aggravate symptoms. Learning how to cope with them healthily is central to mental health treatment. Holistic therapies like meditation, and yoga provide
They might provide mood, but they also improve mood.
improve mood and decrease stress, making them an excellent way to handle triggers healthily.
So I want to take a quick aside here. One of the things that a lot of people don't know is who to go to. So a lot of times people talk about, I have a therapist that I talk to, or I have a friend who's a psychiatrist, or, the company offers a psychologist. And there's confusion about what roles these people do. And I did a little quick research that I threw together here that I just wanted to go over very quickly. And what's the difference between a psychologist, a psychiatrist, and a therapist? Sounds like the start of a joke, right?
Yeah.
Psychiatrist and a psychiatrist will walk into a bar and...
Psychiatrist and a psychiatrist.
So, psychologists, psychiatrists, and therapists. Oftentimes, many people confuse these terms, frequently assuming they're synonymous. However, they all mean different things, but people in these professions strive for the same outcome to improve people's lives. A therapist is more of a general term and refers to anyone who has had some level of training in psychotherapy. This can include psychologists, master level counselors, or psychiatrists, to name a few. It's important to know the term therapist is not regulated by any type of licensing or credentialing board, so anyone can call themselves a therapist. Listed below, blah, 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 some helpful tips. So, a licensed master therapist, or licensed master level therapist, is someone who also has an advanced degree in psychology, and typically they spend about 2 additional years in graduate school to earn their master's degree once their undergraduate degree is complete. The advanced degrees can include specialties as a master's degree in clinical psychology, counseling psychology, marriage, etc., etc. A psychologist is someone who has an advanced degree, a PhD or physical whatever, in psychology, specifically a doctoral degree in clinical counseling or school psychology. This advanced degree typically consists of 6 to 7 additional years of formal education after a bachelor's degree is completed. Most psychologists receive the degree from a school accredited by the American Psychological Association, because such accreditation is a requisite for state licenses. Many psychologists conduct research and or provide psychotherapy. They can diagnose disorders or problems independently in their clients, and the additional years of education and training often result in more experience with advanced top-of-the-line interventions for clients. And the last one is a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist is someone who also has an advanced degree, but they went to medical school for the degree to learn how to prescribe medications for psychiatric conditions. While psychiatrists are not expected to provide psychotherapy due to their scope of practice, many are able to provide very brief supportive psychotherapy to their clients depending on the training history. So it's a graduated scale. So you go from a therapist who could really be anybody, just a good listener, I guess, is really what you're looking for there, to a licensed master level therapist so that they have a level of accreditation. And then you go to a psychologist who's got even more training and experience. And then a psychiatrist is someone who has the training but has the ability to prescribe medications for these conditions. I just wanted to put that out there because this was always something that kind of confused me and always had me scratching my head. Questions?
No, I think I'm good.
Okay. Back to the show.
Yay.
So, stifling the stigma with teen therapy. Anxiety finds us all at some point or another. For children and teens, this can be even more disruptive to their everyday lives. Teens experience heightened emotions regularly throughout adolescence and while growing up.
Today more than ever, teens are constantly surrounded by their peers, whether in person or on their phones. Socially, teens are more involved with their friends constantly through the use of the internet and social media. This can add a lot of extra stress when it comes to fitting in during these formative years. School can provide its own host of stressors. These include class presentations, overly long standardized tests, group projects, online Zoom meetings, and so much more.
So teen therapy as a solution. The stigmas that surround mental illness have existed as long as anyone can remember. However, more recent generations have been taking a stand to stamp out those stigmas in greater numbers. Today's teens tend to value mental well-being more than most of the generations that come before them, and I'm thankful for that, because if I was trying to tackle some of these issues when I was a kid, but doing it as a parent, I would be completely out of touch with any ability to do anything for you at this point. So I'm very thankful for where we are today.
Yeah. So, going with some statistics, more than 1 in 5 adults in the U.S. will experience mental illness. When it comes to teens, at least 17% will experience a mental health disorder. Over 50% of all lifetime mental illnesses begin by the age of 14. When it comes to teens experiencing mental illness, only 50% of those diagnosed get help in the form of treatment. So we all know that a large portion of teens are impacted by mental illness, and that, from that portion, a smaller group is formally diagnosed. Additionally, of that group, only 50% actually find help and treatment. The question is, why are teens resistant to therapy?
And I think the answer is stigmas still exist, despite all the advancements that we've made. It turns out, despite efforts to remove stigmas around finding help for mental well-being, most teens are reluctant when it comes to treatment. A lot of teens feel reluctant to attend therapy sessions, even when encouraged by peers or family, because the understanding of therapy is still vague and stereotypical. When most of us think of therapy, we start to imagine a room with a long couch and an upright office chair where we sit with someone and they ask repeatedly, "How did that make you feel?" The truth is that meeting with a therapist is a vastly different experience, especially one trained to utilize up-to-date practices. Sometimes, a teen's only experience comes from meeting with their school counselor. School counselors are a great resource for teens and can provide some really informative insight to parents who may be ready to seek help but aren't sure how to approach their parents. That all being said, a school counselor won't replace having a therapist to talk to on a regular basis.
Aside from stigmas surrounding seeking care, teens today may also be more open with their friends about mental health. This can be good, but can also have some unexpected negative consequences. On one hand, speaking about their experiences with depression and anxiety with people they feel get it can prove a sense of comfort and can provide a sense of comfort and health. On the other hand, these friends may also not be in treatment, and they may feel that if their friend doesn't need treatment, then they shouldn't either.
So the stigma of the couch, lay on the couch and he's going to ask questions and ask how it makes you feel and all that stuff, that's very stereotypical. What it really is that counselors, in order for you to get any benefit from a counselor or a therapist or a psychologist or whatever, you have to be comfortable and you have to want to open up. If they're pulling at you to get information out of you, you're never going to really get any benefit from it. So the idea is most of these people that you're going to go see are going to try to provide a comfortable environment, a comfortable place to sit. If you're uncomfortable, if you're sitting in a metal chair and you're fidgeting because you're uncomfortable, you're not going to want to talk about things. You're not going to want to solve problems. You're going to get annoyed, right?
Mm-hmm.
They'll usually provide some kind of gentle background music to relax you. They may have incense going. They may have fountains. The typical things that human beings key on to relax and to unwind and to not be stressed out. Everybody, well, most people, I don't want to say everybody, everyone that I know who goes to the doctors are nervous. Always. White coat syndrome, that's what we like to call it. So when you go to see a therapist, we'll say, it's the same type of thing. You're going to walk in there and you're going to be nervous. You're going to be tense. You're not going to want to open up. And their number one job there is to get you to calm down and to get you to feel comfortable and to get you to talk about things that you don't normally talk about. Because if you did, you wouldn't be in their office to begin with. Because a lot of times the things that you talk about with a counselor are things that you try to avoid because they're stressors or they depress you or whatever. They're things that people tend to push down to the bottom of their emotional scale and not pay attention to them. But they're things that need to be dealt with. So the first thing a counselor is going to do is try to get you to calm down and relax and unwind. And your first session might have nothing to do with any of the issues that you're experiencing. It very well could just be, let's get to know each other. Let's have some common ground that we can work off of. Let's get you to the point that you can trust me. You understand that everything that we talk about here is in confidence. There's nothing to worry about. That's a lot of what they're doing right off the bat. And it's to overcome these stigmas. Because people walk in with these preconceptions of what a counselor is going to do. Now, that's after, kudos to these people, they've already taken that big step of going to see a counselor. A lot of people don't walk into a therapist's office the first time willing to open up. But the fact that they walked into that therapist's office is a huge win for them. So the counselors are generally going to be very gentle with you. They're going to ease you into it. Nobody's sticking electrodes on you or sticking you with needles or any crazy stuff like that. They're there to help you. And they're going to be a lot more gentle than your general practitioner is when they take your blood pressure and they're sticking this thing in, that thing in, taking your temperature and all that. So the experience of talking to a therapist is much less invasive than I think people realize. You've talked to your school counselor. Tell us a little bit about the experience, not the details, but the overall experience. How did you find it? Was it relaxing? Was it stressful? Was it scary? What did you find?
I was originally kind of not entirely willing to, 'cause my main idea was just I was gonna miss class. I didn't think I really needed it. I would just talk about it when I got home or something. But, when I first went in there, she was very inviting. She started getting some ground with me. At some point we ended up having a talk about how we're both left-handed, and both of us kind of had that common ground of, well, what that was. She even complimented my nails one time, and really she got common ground with me, and I started to get more comfortable around her.
And that's pretty much the same experience that I had when I went to the counselor the last time. You know, they sat me down in a comfortable chair, and we just sat there and, we talked for the first session. We didn't talk about any of the issues, didn't talk about any of the problems, didn't talk about why I was there, really. It was just get to know me. And she was taking notes the whole time, and she would ask questions. I would make a statement, and she would ask questions. And it was very conversational. I didn't feel like I was being psychoanalyzed or anything like that. I felt like I was having a conversation. So I think it's important for people to understand that it's not a painful experience to go. And I think if people understood that and they overcame that initial stigma of going, once you go, chances are you're going to realize that most of those misconceptions that we talked about in the first segment are all falsehoods. All the stuff, all the reasons people don't want to go, all the bad feelings that people have about them, they'll usually wind up evaporating after that first session. And then after that, your next sessions after that can start to actually be therapeutic. Don't walk in there expecting to have a miracle happen on the first day, because the first day that you go to talk to anybody that you don't know, you've never met these people before in your life probably, they need to sort of get a baseline, and they need to get you to calm down and open up and to trust them. And once that happens, usually you'll see progress after that. But you have to be willing to. Just like if you go to the doctors, if you're not willing to listen to what the doctor's telling you, if you've got an illness and you're not going to take the medicine, and you're not going to, do the rest and sleep and do all the things that the doctor tells you to do, don't expect to get better. It's no different when you go to a counselor. They're going to tell you what they think you need to do to get better. And you need to sort of take that advice. So we're going to take our last break here, and we'll be right back. And we will talk about ways teens can ask for mental health help. Got to put the help on the end there, otherwise it seems kind of ambiguous.
Yeah.
We'll be right back.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're talking about mental health stigma and teens. And now we're going to discuss ways teens can ask for mental health help.
Now you know why I almost missed a help at the end.
Yeah, I can understand that. And this comes to us from Talkspace.com. So when you're a teen experiencing mental health challenges, a majority of the struggle for help is mustering the courage to actually ask for it. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of stigma surrounding mental illnesses, despite how common they are. In fact, 20% of teens ages 13 through 18 have some sort of mental health condition, and that's 1 in 5 teens. Still, the ever-present stigma can make it harder to ask for help or tell anybody about what you're going through, because you might feel embarrassed or scared of what people might think of you.
However, mental health conditions and life in general are tricky. When we're struggling, it can be really hard to overcome obstacles by ourselves. Sometimes we need a little extra help to get by and live our best lives. Here are some tips for teens seeking help with mental health. See, it helps if you put the help in front of it.
Yes.
Reach out to a trusted adult. I know it's scary, but one of the best things you can do is tell an adult what you're going through. It doesn't necessarily have to be a parent if you don't feel comfortable opening up to them just yet. You can reach out to a teacher, a coach, or other relative who you feel close to if you prefer. You also don't have to tell them all the details of what you're going through if you don't want to. You can simply start the dialogue by saying something like, "Can I talk to you about some hard things I've been dealing with?" Or, "I've been having a really hard time lately, and I think I might want to go to a therapist." They'll be glad you reached out to them for help and can support you in taking the next steps. If you're too shy to bring it up in person, you can send the person a text or write them a note or an email.
You can also use school resources. Many high schools and middle schools have some kind of counselor, whether it be a guidance counselor, psychologist, or social worker. These professionals are trained to help students with any problems they might face. Their offices are safe spaces to discuss what you're going through. Ask to schedule an appointment to chat. Depending on the school, your counselor might recommend an outside therapist, or they may be able to set up regular appointments to talk with you. Don't be shy when reaching out and asking them for help. It's literally their job to help students.
You can also join a teen support group. Support groups and group therapy sessions can be really helpful to assist you in feeling less alone. In group settings like this, you'll meet other teens who are going through the same or similar things that you are. These groups will be hosted and moderated by a professional therapist or psychologist to keep everything safe and healthy. In these groups, you're not only getting help from mental health professionals, but also from peers who get it.
You could also call a hotline or write in a chat. If you're feeling suicidal or like you want to hurt yourself, do not hesitate to call a hotline. Operators are trained to help people in crisis mode and help talk you through things when you feel like you're at a point of no return. The National Suicide Prevention Hotline is available and can be called 24/7. There are also specialized helplines for specific issues, such as the National Eating Disorder Association's helpline and Love is Respect's helpline, which is for people in abusive relationships. If you're feeling too nervous to talk out loud on the phone, you can use a chat service on your phone or computer, such as Crisis Text Line, where you can contact with a crisis counselor over text. All of these services are free and confidential. However, these aren't long-term solutions and are not meant to provide you with a long-term treatment.
Know that there's nothing to be ashamed of. Asking for help isn't something to be ashamed of or embarrassed of. In fact, you should be proud of yourself for asking for help, because it means you're brave enough to take the first step in getting better and make a change in your life. If you were feeling sick with a bad cough, you wouldn't be ashamed to ask an adult to take you to the doctor, right? You simply feel something's wrong, and you want to get help to feel better. Look at asking for mental health care the same way you'd look at seeing the doctor for a physical problem.
Remember to help yourself too. One of the greatest things you can do for your mental health is to take good care of yourself, both emotionally and physically. You may be surprised at the positive effect that some lifestyle changes can have on you. For example, make sure you eat breakfast before school, exercise regularly, and get enough sleep. Staying away from drugs and alcohol is crucial. Also, to take care of yourself emotionally, make sure you treat yourself to some self-care. This can be something as simple as journaling about your feelings, taking a relaxing bath, or going for a run to clear your mind.
Asking for help is the first step to overcoming your obstacles and facing your mental health issues head on. You don't have to go through this alone. All you have to do is ask for help. One of the things we'll do is we'll put a post-credit marker on the podcast when we post it. And we'll put the numbers for all those helplines on there for folks so that you actually have those. I meant to put those in here, and I never went back and looked up the numbers to include them in here. But I think really the gist of it is you need to ask for that help. You need to recognize you need the help, and you need the courage. It takes courage to ask for help. Anytime you need help for anything, whether it's mental health, a project for school, lifting something, doesn't really matter what it is. It always takes a certain level of courage to recognize that you can't do it yourself and that you need help. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, and then we'll get your closing remarks.
All right.
We'll be right back.
All right, so to everyone out there, I just wanted to say that while we have definitely gone a long way from most of the generations before us, there's still plenty of stigmas of mental health that we still need to combat. I know when the topic first came up for us, I was very hesitant to seek out therapy because I didn't originally feel like it was something that I should have had, because I didn't think it was because I thought it was really when it got to its worst, and thanks to one of my counselors helping me realize that, if you broke your leg, you'd go to the doctor. So basically, all we're trying to do is get people to maybe help them have the courage to seek out help when they need it, because really, there's not going to be harm in trying to get help.
Absolutely. Very sage words, as always.
Thank you.
And I'll say, when I was growing up, mental health was something where you didn't talk about it. You just grinned and bare it. If you felt bad about something, you got over it. And physical injuries were the same way. Oh, you fell down and scraped your leg? Well, all right, just walk it off. You'll be fine. And society, fortunately, has evolved quite a bit, in the 30-some years since I was at that level too. So fortunately, things are much better now. When I went to the therapist, I always had a combative attitude when I first started, until I got in there and realized that it was for the better. So, but that was all we had today. Before we do go, I want to invite once again our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can find us listed, our audio podcast listed as Insights into Teens. You can find both audio and video podcasts of all the shows, network shows, on as Insights into Things. And we're pretty much where you get a podcast: Pandora, Castro, Stitcher, Podbean, Buzzsprout, etc. I would also invite you to write in, give us your feedback. If you're having issues and you think you need help, reach out to us, and we'll certainly point you in the right direction. We'll be, happy to help you out any way we can. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. We're on Twitter at twitter.com/insights_things. We stream on Twitch 5 days a week at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. You can find high-res versions of all of our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. And you can find links to all these and much more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com. And you.
And don't forget to check out our other two podcasts, Insights into Entertainment, hosted by you and Mommy, and Insights into Tomorrow, our monthly podcast, hosted by you and my brother Sam.
And that's it. Another one in the books.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Talking to real teens about real teen problems. Explore issues from braces to puberty, social anxiety to financial responsibility. Each week, we talk about the topics concerning today's youth. We look at how the issues affect teens, how to cope with these issues, and how parents, friends, and loved ones can help teens handle these challenges. Check out our video episodes on youtube.com/insightsintothings. Catch our audio versions on podcast.insightsintoteens.com or on the web at insightsintothings.com. Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 147, Dealing with Failure. I'm your host, Madison Whalen, and my co-host, Joseph Whalen.
Hello, Maddie. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing okay. How are things been? We've been off. Took an extra week off last week. Band started up again, marching band.
Yep.
So your schedule's filling up. We had to shuffle our recording days around a little bit. So we're recording on Thursdays now.
Yep.
And the schedule is just going to get more hectic as the months roll on, right? That's all right. It's something to do, right? Anything exciting happen in that time?
One of my friends, is in marching band now. One of my younger friends, so.
Well, there you go, see?
I'll be hanging out with her more.
That's cool. All good stuff.
Yeah.
So what are you talking about today?
Today we're talking about dealing with failure. Popular culture has left us with the idea that failure is not an option. While no one likes to fail, the reality of the situation is failure happens. On this episode of Insights into Teens, we're going to talk about what failure is and how to turn failures into positive and constructive experiences. There's the first fumble for the day.
There you go. Let's get that out of the way right up front.
Let's get the fumbles out of the way. Alright, shall we get started? Wait.
We got some business to do before we get started.
I know. But before we get started, I'm sorry, I haven't hosted in a while.
Here, let me prompt you. Here, this might help.
Line,
please.
So hang on. Before we get started, we'd like you to subscribe to our podcast. You can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and pretty much anywhere you can get a podcast service. You can also email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. We're on Twitter at twitter.com/insightsinto_things. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast.
Something.
We're on Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings. Or you can get everything and more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com.
That's a lot of W's there, man.
It's only 3. I'm
all
sorry.
right, we stumbled through all that. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Here we go.
So what is failure? And this research comes to us from betterup.com. So, a fairly common understanding of failure is setting a goal but not achieving it. We tend to believe that knowing whether or not you achieved a goal is fairly simple and straightforward. It's often based on data. But in truth, failure is often in the eye of the beholder. Imagine yourself in these 3 scenarios and whether you'd consider yourself to have failed. An experienced marathon runner sets a goal to run her next marathon in under 4.5 hours. This goal is a full 15 minutes shorter than her prior best time. She completes the marathon in 4 hours and 36 minutes, besting her prior record by 9 minutes. Failure or success?
Well, I don't know. Coming from someone like me, just like doing a marathon is a monumental success. Walking a marathon in 4 days for me would be a monumental success. But that's one of those situations where you certainly did better, but you didn't hit your goal. So maybe it's not 100% success.
Yeah.
But it's more success than what you had been met with before.
Yeah, you were able to not only reach your previous time, but overcome it slightly.
Right. And it's a progressive type thing.
Yeah, and technically thinking about it, you only finished 6 more minutes ahead of your original goal.
Right. So you improved.
You improved.
And that's the important thing.
Yeah.
What's our next scenario?
A senior director seeks a promotion to VIP and competes against other internal and external candidates. She receives positive feedback, but she gets told that the leadership team felt that hiring an external person would demonstrate their commitment to charge, failure, or success.
Well, and this is a good one here. So in this case, what you wanted to achieve was a total failure because you wanted that position of VP. But you got praise. But what's praise going to do in that situation?
Just put salt in the wound.
Right. It's like, oh, you do a really good job, but it doesn't matter because we want to promote a certain image of change, so we're going to bring somebody in from the outside. So in that case, is it a failure because you didn't fail to get the job because you weren't qualified or they weren't the right person? The criteria prevented you from getting the job.
Yeah.
So in that case, failure was the only option because they weren't going to let you have that job no matter what.
Yeah.
So there's still a sense of failure, although there was nothing you could have done differently to change the outcome.
Yeah.
And what's our last one?
Our last one is, a top young professional at an organization gets asked to prepare a slide deck for a high-profile meeting. He submits what he considers to be an excellent presentation to his boss. The boss praises the work, but substantially changes the slides before the big meeting. Failure or success?
And this is another good one. So in this case here, you did everything that was asked of you. The boss changed what the presentation looked like, but I don't know if that necessarily means it's a failure in your part.
Yeah.
Because the boss could be going for a certain type of presentation, a certain style. He could be going for a certain type of reaction from the audience. He might know the audience better than you do. And him asking you to prepare the slides was because you knew the material better than he did.
Yeah.
So if he's presenting the same information, but in a different way, I would say that's probably a success, not a failure.
Yeah.
So let's finish up here, and then I can go on.
So notice that the differentiator in all three of these failure analysis examples is an ideal we've set in our minds. Measuring goal achievement can be a subjective and political activity, and in each of these examples above, you can sense that the individuals tried hard and performed well in their efforts. Perhaps that common definition of being in failure mode as not achieving a goal isn't so accurate and straightforward after all.
Yeah, I think that the important takeaway here is that success is not necessarily goal-oriented, because there are circumstances that determine how much you can succeed. Success isn't black and white. It's not yes or no in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
In many cases, success is a measure of achievement, not a measure of success.
Yeah.
And I think the three examples they give you here are really talking, kind of hitting the point on that, where even though you don't, like, let's put it in terms of high school, okay? So you may have a tough test coming up on a subject that you're struggling with, and you may be getting a B in that class right now. And you study and study and study with the hope of getting 100 on that test, which would far exceed where your current grades are. Where you take the test and you do pretty good on it, but you don't get 100, you get a 95 on it. Well, just because you didn't get 100 doesn't mean you failed. You've gotten far better than you've gotten on the previous tests. So again, it's that measure of how much you've succeeded. It's not a switch that you flip on and off.
Yeah.
Do you have situations like that where your measure of success comes in degrees, or usually do you find that your success or failures are, do or die, where if you don't complete something, then it's 100% failure?
Well, yeah, I will say that. I actually had a specific scenario today, based on my presentation I was supposed to be doing in engineering. Basically, it was about the product life cycle of, in our case, a shoe. And basically, we were the last group to go up, and everyone else did their presentations, and pretty much everyone had certain aspects of the process that our group didn't, and I thought that we didn't get all of it. We're not gonna do well on it. It's just gonna fail, and we're gonna get a lower grade for it, and it's just gonna be awful. So basically, it was like 1 or 2 slides about like the manufacturing process and just the material processing, and basically we didn't include those. We kind of just included what we thought our teacher wanted, and it kind of made me think, oh my god, we've completely failed at this. We were supposed to do all of it and we didn't.
And how did the teacher treat it?
Well, we still did our regular presentation. Other people thought it was pretty well when I asked them, and I'm pretty sure the teacher was fine with it, because there was another group that didn't really do that either. So I don't think he thought of it as a big deal entirely.
See, and that's the important thing, because a lot of times it's not just about whether or not you execute on what the ultimate outcome is, it's how you get there. And I run into this a lot at work with my staff, where I'll task them to do something. And yes, the ultimate goal might be to upgrade a mail server, for instance. Well, doing that and then having all the prep work ahead of time. So, for instance, we're going through a similar situation now, where we're moving to a newer version of our mail server. And it was budgeted for 2 days of work to get done. And we had reached out, we're engaging with an outside vendor in this case here, and we engaged with them weeks ahead of time to try to line everything up. One of the things that I do is I have a tendency of planning things to the nth degree. And I like to have all my stuff planned out and ready to go, and I like to have backup plans in place because nothing ever goes like you plan it in plan A. So I've got plan B, C, D, and E usually. And I had reached out to this vendor probably 3 times and asked them, hey, can you guys jump into our system, give it a once-over, make sure all the assumptions that you've made so far are accurate so that we're going to have a smooth transition. Well, that started last week. So our 2-day project is now finishing up its 2nd week, and it's not done yet. And it's because as soon as these guys decided to start working, they started running into problems. And they're all problems that could have been found ahead of time if they had gotten in the system like I'd asked them to. Licensing issues and drive storage and all kinds of simple things that are maintenance things that had to have been cleaned up after they started. So ultimately, the end goal is going to be achieved. We're going to get this upgrade done, but the project, in my opinion, at least as far as this vendor is concerned, is going to be a failure because it was budgeted for 2 days. It's taken more than 2 weeks. You've inconvenienced my staff. You've inconvenienced my users, and I still don't have the project done. So in that case, it's not about getting the job done. It's about how you got that job done.
Yeah.
And now, we can walk away from this after this, and there's lessons to be learned from that. Okay, so the next time we engage, first of all, do we engage with this vendor again? Do I give them a second chance at the next project? If we do I insist that they get in there ahead of time? Do we check all these things ourselves ahead of time? We'll do an after-action analysis of this and figure out what went wrong, where it went wrong, and whose fault it was. And you do that not to point the finger at people. You do that so that this failure isn't a failure entirely. You do that so that you can learn lessons from it.
Yeah.
So based on that, it's kind of important that we redefine failure. Failure isn't always a yes or no. Did it get done? Didn't it get done? And you can reframe that by using different synonyms. And they talk in the research about several of these synonyms and how they apply. So the first they talk about is novice. So when you're new at something, success is less likely. Just as you can't set an expectation for a child to tie their shoes perfectly the first time or even the 10th time, you can't hold yourself to the standard of the expert when you're a novice. So you kind of have to put things into perspective.
Yeah.
If it's the first time you're doing this sort of upgrade, you have to expect issues.
Yeah.
When you try something new, take a beginner's mindset. Remind yourself that you're a novice and give yourself chances to improve. That leads into a learning opportunity. Fear of failure is one of the strongest inhibitors of learning. We fail at 100% of the things we never try. And we have a chance to learn at 100% of the things we fail at. So even if you fail at something, it doesn't have to be a negative if you can learn something from it. Mm-hmm. And one thing that we've said on this podcast numerous times is that we learn more from our failures than we do from our successes. That's what makes them worthwhile.
Yep.
The next, and we've addressed this on a podcast before, is perfectionism. If you have a strong perfectionist streak, you may label things as failures that really aren't. For example, you may make a mistake during a presentation at a high-level meeting with the top organizational leaders. Despite excellent feedback from all in attendance, you fixate on that one moment that didn't go exactly as planned. When you're beating yourself up for past failure, ask yourself, have I actually failed? And I think a lot of times the things that you tend to beat yourself up on, you do it ahead of time a lot of times. You work yourself up with these expectations of perfectionism. But when you take on those challenges, you more often than not succeed in them. And I think the thing that frustrates me is when I watch this is that the more you succeed at these things that you psych yourself out of, the more confident you should get. And that confidence tends to be not as forthcoming as I'd like it to seeing you.
True.
What else do we have?
There's also systematic bias. Such biases are practices or beliefs embedded within a system that disadvantage different groups. In the modern workplace, systematic bias persists against people of color. They also persist against women, people with disabilities, and the LGBTQ+ community. For many of them, it can be the root cause of their perceived failure. There's also ambiguity. Our worlds are increasingly ambiguous and unpredictable. Who could have anticipated a global pandemic would break roots in 2019, upend the world of work almost overnight? Avoiding failure is nearly impossible in some environments, particularly those that are highly volatile, uncertain, complex, or ambiguous. When ambiguity is decreasing, the likelihood of a goal achievement, adjust goal targets, or pivot the business. There's also trial and error. A core principle of design thinking is the idea of failing fast and learning from failure. This mindset embraces failure as a natural part of the creative process. Trial and error provide the opportunity to continuously make things better.
This is a concept that is, it's a philosophy that's embraced a lot in the tech world. And you'll hear people, Facebook has this philosophy and Google, and it's fail fast. So get out there with whatever this great idea is, put it out there, and if it fails, let's fail quickly so we can correct it and move on. And we run into this, in the development world too. When we prototype, we come up with a new idea that we want to put out there for our users. And the first thing we usually wind up doing is we theorize what we want to do, what the function's going to be, and we figure out what the pain points are that people have, and then we'll build a proof of concept. And what that lets us do is put that functionality out there in a limited fashion without investing too much development time. And you let people take a look at it. And people are going to go out there, they're going to poke around, they're going to click on stuff, and they're going to play with it. And if it falls flat on its face, that's great. That's exactly the time that you want that to happen, because that's where you can correct things without it being too costly. If those failures happen after you go to production with stuff, then it becomes very expensive. We talk about from an engineering standpoint. You're in an engineering course right now. What happens when you get out in the working world and maybe you're an architect for a construction firm, and your job's to build a building? Well, you want those failures to happen on the first floor, because when they happen on the first floor, they're less costly, they're less dangerous, you're less likely to get people hurt than if they happen when the building's at the 30th floor and problems start arising. That's why they say fail quickly. What else do we have?
We also have renewed motivation. Sometimes a small failure becomes the setback that sparks a renowned complement to a goal or project. You may have subconsciously put the goal on autopilot or become distracted by other priorities. And finally, there's being simply unfinished. The basic idea? Something that looks failed or broken may only be a misrepresentation of an unfinished process. Step back and look at the longer-term trajectory before declaring something failed.
Now, this is a great one for anyone who does personal projects. Writing a story, making a movie. Let's take your movie that you were making that was an animated movie that you were doing, stop motion animation. Did you ever finish it? No. But that doesn't make it a failure. Because how much have you learned of the creative process in going through and doing all that stuff?
A lot of, characterization, plot points, and I've honestly changed the story a decent amount.
Exactly. So even though the project never got finished, the knowledge that you took from that and the expansion of your artistic ability that came out of that is huge. which itself makes it a success. So that's how you kind of have to recharacterize some of these things where, yes, I didn't finish that movie and I failed to finish the movie, but in making the effort that I made, I've learned so much more. So, and that's kind of what they're getting at here, is that failures aren't necessarily failures if you've learned from them. And every time that you fail at something, it's a chance for an education. And that's really what we focus on. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to take a look at success versus failure and do a little bit of comparison there. We'll be right back. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're discussing about dealing with failure.
We're disgusting about failure.
Anyway, so now we're going to talk about success versus failure. If the definition of failure is not achieving a goal, then does meeting a goal equal success? To some extent, yes, but that definition feels too confining. Success is psychologically bigger than goal achievement itself. And importantly, it is possible to feel like a successful person even in the face of failure. In our society, we don't tend to acknowledge and appreciate the process of achievements. Instead, we make the feeling of success contingent upon the outcome. It's important to feel successful. When do you allow yourself to feel successful? If you make success contingent only on achieving outcome goals, you might start to find yourself never feeling good enough. Instead, let's consider an alternative definition of success, where we allow ourselves to feel successful for all the efforts we put forth, rather than the outcomes. Success is knowing what you want out of life, and feeling proud of yourself for investing in what is meaningful to you. Success and failure can be highly subjective. A more open mindset may help you reframe your failure and success.
And this is kind of important when we're talking about, especially someone who has a sense of perfectionism. A lot of your perfectionism centers around absolute measures of success. You got that grade, you passed that test, you handed in that assignment and got a grade on it. And a lot of times, that's really not an accurate assessment of success. School's not meant for you to get straight A's.
Yeah.
School's meant for you to fail at sometimes. Because there's things in life where you can't necessarily succeed at. So one of the things that school's supposed to teach you is how to fail. And how to fail gracefully. And how to survive failing. And if you pass everything that you do with flying colors, you'll never learn that. And then when you're out in the real world and you fail, it could be a crippling experience for you. So one of the things that I do with my guys at work is I put them in situations where they can't succeed. I'll give them a goal that they can't achieve. And the purpose of that is not to make them fail. It's to see how they handle the failure, how they handle that pressure, how they learn how to work around the obstacles. And it's always a positive experience. There are times in school that I questioned why we were learning things. And Neil deGrasse Tyson, you know who he is? He is an astronomer. He's a very famous scientist. He's on a lot of the documentaries that I watch, and you know, he's on Twitter a lot and stuff. Very smart man. He hosted the series Cosmos, by the way, the revival of Cosmos. Very good series. He put a statement out fairly recently, and he talked about math in high school. And kids want to know, why do I have to learn calculus? I'm never going to need to use it in my life. I'm going to go be an artist or whatever. I'll never need calculus. And what he pointed out was that learning calculus, the ultimate outcome of that exercise was not to know how to do calculus when you were done. It was the exercise of learning differently. Because as you learn different ways of learning, and math is a great example because every type of math out there uses a different part of your brain. As you learn calculus, you're training your brain how to work a different way. And it's that training of your brain that turns on different things in your brain that allows you to deal with situations differently. So you may never need to know calculus when you get out of high school. But the things that you taught your brain to do when you learn calculus are problem-solving skills you're going to need in real life. And that's what a lot of teenagers and high school students don't realize. Yes, it may be stupid to read. You may think it's stupid to read Romeo and Juliet because it's not a true love story because of various reasons. But in going through and reading the stories and understanding the language and the emotion and the various different things that reading that type of thing brings out, it's unlocking different parts of your brain. You're never going to have to probably ever quote Shakespeare again in your life, depending on what you do in college. But the different learning exercises that you go through, you just got a project for this where you have to turn the balcony scene into a text message. Why? What's the purpose of that?
It's to show that we understand what the scene is trying to do.
Yes, but no. It's how to translate this complex set of emotions that are conveyed in the play into modern time. It's almost an interpretive way of working through emotions that you might not otherwise have the experience to work through. If you're not dating anybody, you're not confronted with these emotions, so you don't feel them, you don't experience them, you don't understand them necessarily. When you go through a play like this, the author, in this case, Shakespeare, teaches you about these emotions through the words, through the phrases, through the actions. So it's about teaching you about much more than just the words in the story. So that's kind of what we talk about here, in that when you fail, your failure becomes that educational experience where the next time that you have to do that challenge, you might fail, but you might fail for different reasons. You're not going to fail for the same reasons. And it teaches you how to deal with those hardships and those experiences, because you're not going to always succeed. As perfect as you are in school and as great as your grades are, when you get in the real world, there's going to be obstacles that you can't overcome. You're going to need to be able to be equipped to handle those. Everybody is. And that's why a lot of times when they give you a test that you can't pass, my history teacher, as much as I complained about him when I was in high school, did this. He would give you a test on something you never talked about in school because he expected you to read the book, even though you didn't do it in class. And when I failed those tests, I learned how to learn in his class. And it was tough. It was a challenge up front. So the other thing that they do talk about are stages of failure. Over time, you may shift your focus to feeling successful from process outcomes. There's 3 stages of failure. Failure of vision is when you're not clear about what you want on your personal why, or your personal why. When you don't know what you want out of life, or if you're not feeling purpose and meaning in your life, then you might have a feeling of failure of vision. This is where looking inward and focusing on your own well-being can make a difference. Failure of tactics. This is when you know what you want, but you don't have a clear or effective plan for achieving it. For instance, maybe you failed to complete a project because you only have a general sketch and not a master plan. Even those who are effective at strategic planning in the workplace sometimes struggle, especially when translating those skills into tactics for personal or leadership development. This is where habit tracking and development can be very effective. Failure of strategy is when you have a plan and follow it, but still don't know how to achieve your goal. An endless number of factors could be affecting your success. They may be related or unrelated to your plan. Failure strategy is an ideal moment to employ your design thinking skills and get working on the next iteration. Understanding why you feel failure can help you overcome challenges to your process outcomes. Perhaps you're simply unfinished. Then thinking through this will result in renewed motivation to achieve your process outcomes. Keep in mind that none of us can avoid failure all the time. That's not the intent. We live in a world where our successes as individuals and teams depend on us learning more and faster to perform better. If we aren't failing, we probably aren't taking enough risks. Too often, we kind of intellectually embrace experimentation and risk-taking. But we want to do it efficiently and cleanly without failing. That's not the intent.
The intent is to be resilient in the face of failures. A resilient person will use these strengths in service of goal achievement. The first is self-compassion. Show kindness toward yourself and others involved in the failure. Focus on empathy and creating the failure and keeping the failure in perspective. There's a difference between admitting failure and beating yourself up over it. There's also your cognitive agility. Be willing to quickly learn from failures and pivot to new opportunities. There's also a growth in mindset. Take a learner's approach with a non-judgmental stance. By default, we respond defensively or cast blame. Instead, reflect deeply and try to understand how to be different going forward. There's also problem solving. Stay curious and creative. Collect data to inform decisions and next steps. There's also purpose and meaning. Don't have regrets. Reconnect with the larger meaning behind the goal and use that to drive new approaches. And finally, we have recognition. Appreciate the efforts that you and others have dedicated thus far. Feel successful by weighing the process as much as or more than the outcome.
And I think that kind of touches on all the points that I had talked about there, is that it's a process. You know, failure is something that happens, but it's something that we can turn into something that's constructive. And you can't beat yourself up over it.
Yeah.
We're going to take our last break here. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about learning from failure. We'll be right back.
All right.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're talking about dealing with failure. And now we're going to talk about learning from failure. So, as we always like to say, failure is a great teacher. It can be a valuable lesson for us in the long run. We should be able to examine it and take important lessons away from it. Performing a failure analysis and looking at the root causes of our failure is a key way of learning from failure. This is partially true if This is particularly true if you suffer a complex failure where the reason for failure may not be immediately clear. It's nice to know what we are doing in our jobs or business. But failure feedback gives us something equally important, a learning process or teachable moment about what we are doing wrong as well. Often, small failures early on in a project can almost be like an experiment. These failures can create intervention that leads to future success.
This is one of the things that I do a lot at work, where I have two different teams that report to me, and it's my job to point out not just failures, but where they can improve. So a lot of times I look like I'm overly critical. I appear overly critical sometimes to my team. And I have one employee who kind of hits it accurately description on me. And he says, I'm firm but fair. I don't unfairly criticize people. I don't nitpick. But areas that there can be improvement. Like one of the things I try to do is I always try to empower my teams. If they have to communicate with the users or with upper management, I prefer that they do it directly. But when they send that communication out, I'll review it and I'll give them pointers if I think there's ways that they could make it better. So the next time they have to do it, they can improve what they do, and I'm not micromanaging them. I trust my employees to do the things they need to do in order to get their jobs done. But I'm there kind of as a teacher to help them tweak things, make things better, think a little bit differently, approach things differently, rephrase things. When there's a technical problem and people come to me, we just had an incident this week where my one team had a server go down on them. And they were kind of disorganized in how they were going about fixing it. And they came to me and they gave me what their proposed solution was. And it was a valid solution. It just wasn't one that would have been top on my priority list. So I kind of talked them through the process of what our priorities are, what we need to do first. Based on what we need to do first, let's figure out what the best solution is to try first. And ultimately we came up with 4 different options. Their solution was one of those options, but it was number 3 on that list. We never had to get to it because number 2 on my list turned out to be the solution, and we were able to get things back up and running. But it taught them that process of, okay, a server's down, it serves a certain function. How do we fix this? How do we prioritize a solution? They kind of did it, but they didn't do it as effectively or as efficiently as I would have liked them to. Walking them through that process, they now have learned that. Did they fail to do their jobs? Absolutely not. They just learned a better way to do it in the long run. Mm-hmm. So what we do after things like that is we'll perform a failure analysis. And there's several different frameworks that you can use for failure analysis. One of the most popular is the FMEA, the Failure Mode and Effects Analysis. Performing a failure analysis allows you to calculate the risk priority number, the RPN, for a process. An RPN is based on the severity occurrence rate, and detection rate of different challenges that may arise in your business processes. One other thing that we add to our risk analysis is the overall impact. Is it affecting one user? Is it affecting a department? Is it affecting the entire company? Is it production down? Is it mission critical production down, I should say? Is it an inconvenience? So it has to be an impact analysis along with it from our perspective. So to perform a process failure analysis, there's 10 steps that you need to know. The first is to review the process, brainstorm potential failure modes, the root causes of the problem, list potential effects of each failure, assign severity rankings, assign occurrence rankings, assign detection rankings. We would then assign our impact analysis ranking. Calculate the risk priority number, develop an action plan, take action, calculate the resulting RPN, your risk priority number, at that point in time. And then the third thing that we'll do, or the last thing I should say that we would do, is after the problem's fixed, we'll go back and do a deep dive on the process itself, and we'll figure out what we can do in the future to either prevent that failure or improve the process itself, and how we can be more efficient at solving that problem in the future. And it's not something that we're going to change policies or anything, but that thought experiment itself is that educational feedback loop that I like to keep my guys kind of working in all the time. They say if you want to take a more structured approach to learning from your model, these steps will guide you through the process. So, what should we take away from failure?
Well, the biggest thing is probably that failure is not inherently bad. On the contrary, most failures provide amazing opportunities to gain new insights about yourself or your work. And some failures even create the opportunity to be triumphant. We are working and living in increasingly ambiguous and fast-changing systems. We will all have to get more comfortable with making mistakes and learning to fail better. Learning to fail is a skill we can all practice.
And I'll even add to that, to not be afraid to fail. If you're afraid to fail, and we talked about it earlier, then you're afraid to take the risks necessary to elevate yourself to the next level. Now, I'm typically a pretty risk-averse person myself, so before I take that risk, I'll generally do a risk-benefit analysis. And that's basically sitting down and figuring out if I take this risk, is the benefit going to outweigh the potential for the detriment? And if it is, or if it's a 50-50, I'll probably go with the risk itself. And that's sort of where we came up with those 4 solutions for that server failure that we had this weekend. What are my risks? Okay, well, my risk is this server's not going to come back up. It's a hardware failure. We're never going to get it back up. We're never going to get a backup of it. And that was the determining factor in what direction we went, because we didn't have it in the backup system. So we had to get it back up in a certain way so that we could then take a backup of it, and then with that backup, we had different options. So don't be afraid to fail. Everybody fails. Learn how to fail gracefully. Yeah. That's the important thing. We're going to take a quick break, come back, and get your closing thoughts and shout-outs if you have any.
Alrighty. Alright, so the biggest takeaway is that, well, failure is a really great teacher. It's honestly been a lesson that we've said in a lot of our podcasts at this point, and we finally dedicated an entire podcast to finally defining it and realizing that it really isn't so black and white as most people would think of it as. Again, we've mentioned how society genuinely thinks that failure is a bad thing and you shouldn't be failing and should always strive for success. However, when you do actually fail, it's normally a learning process, and everybody's gonna fail. It's not impossible to not fail. When you do fail, you should strive to get better. And Like we always say, you learn more from your failures than you do your successes.
Very good. Sage words as always. And I think that's all we had for today. Before we do go, I would want to once again invite you to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Teens. You can find video versions and audio versions of all of our podcasts listed as Insights into Things. We're available on Pandora, Castro, Stitcher, Podbean, Buzzsprout, and pretty much any place you can get a podcast. I would also invite you to write in, give us your feedback. We'd love to hear how we're doing. Give us your suggestions for show topics. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. We're on Twitter at insights_things. You can find high-res versions of our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. We do stream 5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. Or you can find links to all that and more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com.
And don't forget to check out our other two podcasts, Insights into Entertainment, hosted by you and Mommy, and Insights into Tomorrow, our monthly podcast, hosted by you and my brother Sam.
Well done. That's it. Another one in the books.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com. Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 146, Loneliness and Social Isolation. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and my refreshed and energized co-host, Madison Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today, Maddie?
I'm all right. How about you?
Doing okay. So we are back from an unintentional extended hiatus. We'll call it our spring break, because spring break actually happened during our hiatus. So you had gotten sick, just a cold, nothing serious, and then you had promptly gotten me sick. So that killed 2 episodes. And then I was down for 2 weeks or so. Then you were on vacation for spring break. So we didn't do anything then. And now we're back and we're getting back into the swing of things. So we had 4 weeks off, I think.
I don't remember.
That was quite some time. So you should be very refreshed and energized at this point.
Yeah.
Anything exciting going on this week at school or anything?
Take your kid to work days tomorrow.
That's always exciting. Who are you going to work with?
No one.
No one, huh? Okay. Not that exciting then. You did have your band banquet yesterday. Yeah. How'd that go?
Pretty good.
Anything exciting come out of that?
I got a bunch of pastries that I brought home.
Gotta love the pastries. Anyway, that's not what we're talking about today. So for many teens, their social world is everything to them. Who they hang out with, the kids they relate to, and the extracurricular activities they participate in all help the teenager to define a sense of self. Loneliness and social isolation are real issues for teens even without having to live through a pandemic. But add to the required isolation associated with a pandemic on top of the normal sense of loneliness teens can feel, and it quickly becomes overwhelming. In today's episode of Insights into Teens, we're going to take a look at what causes loneliness and social isolation, the physical and mental health impacts on our teens, and techniques to help combat these issues. But first, I would like to invite you, our viewing and listening audience, to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio versions of all of our podcasts listed as Insights into Teens. You can also find video and audio versions listed as Insights into Things. We can be found on most podcast providers, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and TuneIn. I'd also like to invite you to give us your feedback, tell us how we're doing, give us your show suggestions. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can message us on Twitter at insights_things. It's also worth noting that as of this broadcast, we do send our live stream out on our Twitter feed as well now too, as well as all the other feeds that we send out. So you can watch us live on Twitter now. You can also get us on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast. We're on Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings. Or, as always, you can get links to all those and more on our official website at insightsintothings.com. Ready to get into it?
Yep.
Here we go. So, the research you did for this episode came from Cigna.com. And while their social world is important to many teens, not all teens are outgoing and social by nature. Some might be more introverted, and some may have low self-esteem. Some adolescents suffer from social anxiety, which can keep them trapped in isolation due to the irrational fear of being ridiculed or harshly judged while in a public setting. When a teenager struggles socially, it can result in feelings of profound loneliness. As a result, they may become depressed, which can then cause a cascade of other symptoms that only add to their suffering. By understanding more about the causes of teenage loneliness, parents can take steps to help their child overcome obstacles and improve social functioning. So, what is loneliness and social isolation?
So, loneliness is the feeling of being alone regardless of the amount of social contact. Social isolation is a lack of social connections. Social isolation can lead to loneliness in some people, while others can feel lonely without being socially isolated. Short-term bouts of loneliness can occur to many people at some point in their lives. These types of feelings are typically brief and not considered chronic. However, when feelings of loneliness and isolation worsen and continue long-term, there may be more serious signs and symptoms to be aware of and steps you can take to help deal with chronic loneliness. Chronic loneliness occurs when feelings of loneliness and uncomfortable social isolation go on for a long period of time. It's categorized by constant and unrelenting feelings of being alone, separated or divided from others, and an inability to connect on a deeper level. It can also be accommodated by deeply rooted feelings of inadequacy, poor self-esteem, and self-loathing. Ongoing loneliness can afflict even the most seemingly outgoing person. Being the life of the party doesn't necessarily exclude someone from being chronically lonely. This type of chronic or long-term loneliness can eventually impact all areas of your life.
So, have you experienced loneliness in your life?
I'd say I have, yeah.
And is that something that, obviously during the pandemic, it's kind of hard to avoid that. Obviously, social isolation is something that's kind of been forced on us at this point in time. Was the loneliness the result of the pandemic, or was it under different circumstances?
I mean, I kind of felt lonely before the pandemic when I realized a lot of my friends were either moving away or I'd get in fights with some of them. So I felt lonely before then. And at the start of the pandemic, I really didn't feel all that lonely because I'm naturally an introvert, and it wasn't as hard on me until it started going on for over a year at this point, over multiple years. And it started finally hitting me that I really didn't get to interact with people due to the pandemic, and I kind of was held back from it.
So it sounds like the root cause of the loneliness you've described has been having a social setting and then having elements of that social setting removed without your control. Is that a fair assessment?
Probably.
So do you consider yourself a social person?
With certain people, yes. Other people, not really. If you're a complete stranger, probably not. If you're someone I've already gotten to know, then yeah.
So what is a factor that plays into whether or not you get to know someone?
I guess a lot of it depends if I can relate to that person, or if the person comes up and talks to me, or if I feel that I kind of want to talk to this person because I see that they're interested in something I'm interested in, and there's a few factors that really determines if I really decide to get to know someone.
Are you typically the type of person who would initiate that contact, or are you introverted to the point that someone else has to initiate that contact before you reciprocate?
Most of the time, people normally other people would initiate it, while sometimes I would initiate it if I felt like it.
Okay. Now, is your hesitation a matter of trust in the other person, or is it a matter of comfort in expressing yourself openly like that?
Probably more of the second, but I can definitely see the trust also being a factor.
Yeah, because, I mean, anytime that you have to approach someone that you're not already familiar with or comfortable with, you have to kind of open yourself up a little bit, and that can be very scary and very uncomfortable for people. Or do you consider yourself lonely at the moment?
I mean, not really. I have people that I talk to on a daily basis, so maybe not.
So what do you think, for you at least, and it doesn't have to mean it's the solution for everyone, but for you, what solves that loneliness? Is it finding new friends? Is it reconnecting with existing friends? Is it just a social environment? Is it talking on the phone? What is it that solves that loneliness feeling for you?
I guess it would be just talking to the people I know right now, forming stronger bonds and such.
Okay. So there are other things. There's a lot of things that can cause loneliness. So what are some of the things that can cause teen loneliness? Moodiness is a given in teens for a variety of understandable reasons. These mood swings can often result in feelings of loneliness. Some teens, however, may like holing up in their rooms. These adolescents may be loners, preferring time alone to spending their spare time with peers. Some teens are more studious and tend to gravitate towards solitude where they won't be distracted from their work. Others may have solitary hobbies, such as creating art or writing. which results in reduced social time. Let me ask you that. You're an artist. You write, you produce movies, you draw. Do your hobbies contribute to that chance of loneliness? Are they a factor in it at all?
I mean, I found that in certain ways, I've been able to use my art in social scenarios in order to relate to other people. But taking the time to do it for the most part, I don't really do it in front of people or with people, and I kind of do it in my spare time. So maybe it could be a benefactor of loneliness, but I've also been able to connect with people with art. So kind of a midway streak.
So your art has been a way for you to kind of, I guess, break the ice, express yourself to other people.
Yeah.
But you don't do art in a social environment.
Yeah.
I gotcha. That makes sense. When a teen exhibits a distinct shift in their personality, going from a friendly social person to being withdrawn and isolated, it's a cause for concern. There are a variety of factors that might contribute to teenage loneliness, including social media. Ironically enough, by its definition, you think it wouldn't, but with more social time spent interacting through phone apps, the result is a more superficial connection with others. The less you're connected with human beings in a deep, empathic way, the less you're really getting the benefits of social interaction. What else do we have?
There's also being bullied. Teens that are the target of bullies may naturally tend to avoid re-expressing these distressing situations at school functions. Bullying and social shaming can also be played out on social media, further marginalizing the teen. There's also relationship problems. They may be socially awkward, lacking the skills to connect with peers. They may have issues with conflict resolution or anger management that results in other teens avoiding them, leaving them with few friends. Low self-esteem or lack of confidence can contribute to problems relating to others.
And depression, which any of those things can certainly lead to. Teens that suffer from depression will tend to withdraw socially. As the teen succumbs to depression, they may sleep more, self-isolate, and experience more fatigue. Social anxiety. These are a lot of these things are things that we've talked about on the podcast. Some teens struggle with intense feelings of fear and dread around being criticized by their peers. This anxiety will often result in isolating behaviors. The teen wants to see their friends but cannot bear the thought of possibly being the object of ridicule, so they just stay home. And the last one they talk about here is body image issues. Some teens may experience body dysmorphia, or the irrational criticism of their body shape or appearance. The teen may have an exaggerated view of their perceived imperfections or flaws, which can result in isolating behaviors. So we have a fairly extensive list of possible causes here. Do any of these, or have any of these, do you think, played a factor in the loneliness that you've experienced in the past?
Some of them do. Social media, not really, because I don't really use social media.
Good for you. It's a cesspool.
Yeah, might even need to do an entire podcast entirely just on that. Being bullied, I've never really been bullied.
That's good.
Directly, so don't really have that problem. Relationship problems. I have noticed that I do have I tend to lack confidence in most social situations, and my self-esteem seems to take a complete nosedive during those situations, so...
And that's fairly common in teens.
I don't really have anger management issues. I'm decent with conflict resolution, so... And... I mean, I'm kind of socially awkward, but I do have decent skills for the most part, just I lack the confidence to initiate most conversations, and my self-esteem normally just is like, you don't deserve to talk to these people, they don't want to talk to you, that kind of stuff.
And it's funny, one of the things that really helps to overcome that sort of hesitation is practice. The more you step out of that shell and into that uncomfortable zone of socializing, the easier it gets. It's like riding a bike. You know, you may fall off a couple times and skiing your knee, but if you keep getting back on it and keep doing it, before long it's second nature to you. How about depression? Do you suffer from depression, do you think?
Not that I know of.
Okay. And I think we've discussed that, and you didn't fit the symptoms that are typical.
Yeah.
Social anxiety? A little bit?
Yeah.
That might be a factor.
Body image issues. Our last podcast was on.
We just covered that.
And I don't think I really have too many body image issues that would put me more at like loneliness. Like whenever I do think these people don't want to talk to me, I'm just annoying them. It's not really relating to the fact of how I look, because I would like to think that people don't really have, body standards. Unfortunately, we live in a society where that is a thing. But, I like to see at least the best in people who I don't know. It's like they don't care how I look. They just think I'm annoying them because I can tend to I'm just annoying them as a person.
Okay. Well, that's certainly one way to look at it. So it sounds like you might be hit or miss on a couple of these.
Yeah.
So we're going to take our first break. And when we come back, we're going to take a look at some of the signs and symptoms of teen loneliness. We'll be right back.
All right.
For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're talking about loneliness and social isolation. And now we're going to delve into the signs and symptoms of loneliness. So chronic loneliness symptoms and signs can differ depending on who you are and your situation. If you constantly feel some or all of the following, you may be dealing with chronic loneliness. One of these is the inability to connect. One of these is the inability to connect with others on a deeper, more intimate level. Maybe you have friends and family in your life, but engagement with them is at a very surface level. Your interaction doesn't feel connected in a way that is fulfilling, and this disconnection seems never-ending. Also, you have no close or best friends. You have friends, but they're casual friends or acquaintances, and you feel you can find no one who truly gets you.
You may also experience an overwhelming feeling of isolation regardless of where you are and who's around you. You can be at a party surrounded by dozens of people, and yet you feel isolated, separate, and disengaged. At work or in school, you may feel alienated and alone. The same thing on a bus, train, or walking down a busy street. You're surrounded by people, but you still feel like you're isolated and by yourself. It's as if you're in your own unbreakable bubble. You also may experience negative feelings of self-doubt and self-worth. Does it feel like you're always less than enough? These feelings, long-term at least, are another possible symptom of chronic loneliness. When you try to connect or reach out, is it not reciprocated and you're not seen or heard? Do you experience exhaustion and burnout when trying to engage socially? If you're dealing with chronic loneliness, trying to engage and be social with others can leave you feeling exhausted. Continued feelings of being drained can lead to other issues like sleep problems, a weakened immune system, a poor diet, and more. Now, it's funny that they mention that because not being a particularly social individual myself, I find social interaction tends to be stressful and exhausting to me, which I think is probably one of the reasons why I'm not social, nor does it bother me that I'm that social. But like when I'm in a social environment, I just find it exhausting to have to maintain conversations with a group of people. Part of it's my hearing too. We've talked about this in the past where I have a difficult time in crowds with my hearing. I have a difficult time discerning individual conversations. Everything sort of blends together for me. So it requires a tremendous amount of effort on my part to maintain a conversation. Like if I'm at a party or at a bar or something like that, and there's a large group of people and there's a lot of noise, and I'm trying to have a conversation with one person. This is why I don't like going to dinner at loud places. It's a very difficult situation for me because I can't hear it very well. How about you? Do you experience any of these symptoms, do you think?
Well, I don't think I mean, like, I connect with you guys on a decently intimate level. I mean, we have the podcast, so...
Sure, yeah.
At least it's with you guys, and I have a deep connection with some of my friends, so I do think I have close friends, at least, and I consider most of my friends to be my best friends, even though, like, I know that best friends is, like, a term only used for, like, oh, this is for one person, like, this is your bestest friend, and I'm like, no, I can have multiple best friends, why not?
Sure, why not?
Overwhelming feeling of isolation regardless of where you are and who's around. Yeah, that happens.
Okay.
At the banquet specifically, like, I was sitting at a table with a bunch of people, but I still kind of felt socially isolated. Because, like, they all had one-off conversations with each other, and I was kind of just there.
Okay, how about feelings of self-doubt or self-worth?
Yeah, I do kind of have that. Like, sometimes I feel as though I don't entirely have a presence anywhere.
Okay, I could certainly see that as a symptom.
And I'm not really in existence, or no one really acknowledges.
How about the exhaustion aspect of things? Do you get exhausted, or do you find it exhausting or tiresome to try to be social?
I mean, with some people, kind of, which is why I don't really socialize with those people.
Okay. I could see there's a lot of people that that have that effect on me too, and I try to avoid them.
But, like, even with some of my close friends, I'll come up with topics, and then, like, when I'm on the phone with my one friend, we'll just sit in silence for a few minutes because neither of us can come up with something to talk about.
But there are times that you could talk for hours with your friends, too.
True.
Okay, so it sounds like you may have some of these symptoms, so there might be a little loneliness that's still creeping into the picture there. So why don't you tell us how loneliness affects your mental health?
So long-term feelings of loneliness can affect your health in many ways. For example, chronic loneliness can drive up cholesterol levels in the body. Cholesterol is a hormone...
Cortisol levels.
Cortisol?
Cholesterol is a whole different thing.
Fine. Imagine I said...
You can just re-say it. It's okay.
Okay, for example, chronic loneliness can drive up cortisol? Cortisol. Can drive up cortisol levels in the body. Cortisol is a hormone that your body creates when under stress. Over time, higher cortisol levels can lead to inflammation, excess weight gain, insulin resistance, problems concentrating, and more.
Yep. And more. Yes, you got the more right.
Anyway, if left unchecked, these chronic loneliness symptoms can put you at a greater risk for more serious medical and emotional problems, including depression, sleep disorders, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, mental health and emotional problems, and substance use. There's even the possibility that chronic loneliness and the health risks that come with it could shorten one's lifespan. If you think you are suffering with long-term feelings of loneliness, talk to your doctor or a therapist.
So all those things are bad, obviously. But what does it do to your brain? Because we've already talked about several emotional and mental things that this might do. So research shows that chronic loneliness can have a significant impact on your overall health, including your brain health. Some studies even suggest that there may be a link between loneliness and an increased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. Long-term feelings of loneliness and social isolation can also reduce cognitive skills, such as the ability to concentrate, make decisions, problem solve, and even change negative self-beliefs. And it ultimately can lead to depression. And I think really the conclusion of the health impacts here kind of is human beings are social animals. And even people like me who I don't particularly yearn for social interaction, there's benefits from it. And you may not necessarily acknowledge those benefits. You may not recognize those benefits, but they're there and they're clinically proven. You know, human beings are not built to be isolated on their own. We're pack animals, say. So there's always been some social element. And when that social element is there and it's working, your body generates positive chemicals, positive hormones, and it operates at a different level. Your brain operates at a different level. And when there's an overall lack of that, it's almost like dieting, right? So you want to have a balanced diet. If you have too much of one thing, if you have too many carbs and not enough protein, then it's bad for your body. Social interaction is kind of the same way. You have to have a balanced diet of social interaction. Otherwise, you suffer from loneliness. And the loneliness has this detrimental physical and mental effect on you because human beings are just designed to be around other people. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that is pretty much what to gain from this. It's because it's our natural instinct, and the whole point, one of the biggest attributes of us is that we're social creatures, and if we aren't put in social situations that can damage us at this point, since we've developed it for so long, it can genuinely have damaging effects, and a lot of it's kind of for survival purposes.
Absolutely.
Even if it's not like the primitive versions of, we have to stick together and kill this thing or it's going to kill us. It's a lot more emotional and still very physical, but not in the ways that it used to be. But it's still very psychological. It can still have damaging effects, and it even stated that it can shorten your lifetime if it gets to a serious point.
Yeah, that's a very good point. It's prehistoric. It's built into us genetically from the time that we were cavemen and we had this hunt in packs in order to survive, and it was a defensive mechanism, and through generations and generations, that defensive mechanism became something that we were dependent on for our mental and physical wellness. It's evolution. It's a wonderful thing, isn't it?
I know. Thank you, Charles Darwin.
So anyway, we're going to take our last break, and then we're going to come back, and we'll talk a little bit about who's most at risk, and then some tips for dealing with loneliness. We'll be right back.
Alrighty.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're talking about loneliness and social isolation. Yay. I want to do that. Now we're going to talk about who's most at risk. So chronic or long-term loneliness can afflict all types of people. It's easy to assume that someone who's naturally shy and introverted might be most at risk, but outgoing, type A personalities can also suffer from chronic loneliness, even though they may appear to be the life of the party. This type of loneliness is not exclusive to any one personality type.
For some people, chronic loneliness may become a side effect of a medical or emotional problem, including those dealing with the following issues: substance use, depression or bipolar disorder, a serious illness or disease, some mild forms of autism such as Asperger's syndrome, dementia and Alzheimer's, and sexual orientation issues. All of these issues could also lead to long-term feelings of loneliness and isolation. Make sure your doctor, therapist, or other medical provider knows how you're feeling emotionally. And then that brings us to, what can we do about this?
So here are some tips for dealing with loneliness. If you're dealing with feelings of loneliness that just don't go away, consider these tips. The first tip they give is to talk to your doctor, a therapist, or other healthcare professional. Chronic illness isn't limited to feelings of social isolation and alienation from others. It's often tied to ongoing and deeply rooted negative feelings about yourself that can eventually lead to other medical and emotional problems. Let someone know what's going on. You could also engage with other people in a positive, healthy way. Even though it may be difficult, try making the effort to connect with others. Volunteering, hobby clubs, workout groups, and other opportunities can help boost self-esteem and provide a safe and satisfying way to connect with others.
You can also get some exercise and sunlight. Getting active and out in the sunshine can help elevate endorphins and serotonin. These brain hormones can boost mood, help improve sleep, and make people feel happier. Find a support group, especially if chronic loneliness is a side effect of some other issues you might be dealing with, such as substance abuse, loss of a loved one, loneliness from a divorce or breakup, or chronic and isolating illness. Receiving support and encouragement from others who may share similar feelings could help ease symptoms of chronic loneliness. If you're dealing with long-term loneliness, the kind that doesn't go away, talk to your doctor or another healthcare provider so they can help. Chronic loneliness is not just about feeling alone. If left unchecked, it can put you at risk for serious physical and emotional issues. Now, that's all kind of the clinical antiseptic descriptions that we were able to get from our research that you did, which you did a very good job on. But speaking from a personal perspective, I think everyone at some point in time, and usually many times in their life, experiences some form of loneliness. And it can be brought on by a lot of different things. You know, when My mom passed away. I went through a real significant period of loneliness. I went through a depression. You lose your job. I went through a divorce. These are all things that contributed to feelings of loneliness. And even simpler things, like if mommy and I get into an argument for something, and she gets mad at me, there's a feeling of loneliness there. So it's all kinds of things. Sometimes it's big things. Sometimes it's little things. Sometimes it's things you don't have control over. What are some of the things, like we've talked about friends moving away. Like, how does that make you feel if you're, you had a close friend that literally lived right next door and she moved away? Now, she didn't move too far away, but she moved far enough away that you don't have very frequent interactions anymore. How did that make you feel from a loneliness standpoint?
Well, I did feel a little more isolated from her. We had a whole thing before the pandemic where I would basically just walk up to her house, hope that her car was, like, her parents were home and she was home, basically ring their doorbell, and I'd go in and play, and just, like, hang out for a few hours. Now I kind of have to plan it in advance and actually get mommy to drive me over, as opposed to, oh, I'm ready, I can go and just see her and such.
So that relationship, that friendship is still there. It's just not as convenient as it was.
I guess, yeah.
Was there any other kind of replacement that came into play there? Did you become friends with anybody else in the neighborhood? Did you get another hobby? What did you do to fill that gap?
I guess I still just tried talking to her more. I'd send her more stuff. We'd still have calls. I just tried to still keep in good contact with her.
So it shifted less face-to-face because you couldn't have that to phone calls and chat sessions and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you were able to, for the most part, compensate for something like that.
Yeah. Has
there been something, some other kind of loneliness that happened that you couldn't compensate for that you had to learn how to deal with? Like, for instance, we've had pets pass away on us. Now, anytime there's a death in the family, and the pets are always members of the family, but anytime there's a death in the family, there's always a loneliness that's there, a familiarity that's not there anymore that causes a loneliness. You can't easily replace that. How do you deal with something like that?
I guess with that, I'd try to, take comfort in the other cats we had.
Okay.
I'd spend more time with them. I would try petting them more. I'd ask them how their day was. And basically just try to, spend time with them.
So it's almost like a physical injury, right? So you've hurt your knees in the past just with marching band. So when you hurt your knees, what do? You don't just sit there and not do anything. You find another way to get around. You twist an ankle, you wind up limping, or you use crutches, or whatever it is. Loneliness is sort of like that too. When you experience loneliness, you can't just shut down. You don't crawl into a ball in a corner somewhere and cry and give up on the world. You find a way to get around it. You lean on something else. And whether that's finding an alternative to what caused the loneliness, or finding a new way to distract yourself from that loneliness, whatever it is, that loneliness is sort of like having an injured limb where you can't put the same pressure on it that you had before because it hurts. So you find a way to compensate for it. And I think that's probably the most important takeaway here, is that everyone's going to experience loneliness. You can't avoid it. As much as mommy and daddy want to shelter you, you're going to experience that at some point in time. The important thing is how you handle that. How you compensate for that loneliness. How crippling is it to you, and how quickly can you recover from it? Because just like a physical injury, loneliness is something that you can recover from. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I definitely think that's an accurate assessment to make, because it is a good allegory, because you're not really going to be the same afterwards, and you're going to have that moment where it's like, okay, you kind of have to find alternative ways to deal with it, or alternative ways to think and such, and eventually you will end up healing from it.
Exactly. And you'll get stronger from it. You know, the first time you feel that loneliness, it can be overwhelming, depending on the type of loneliness. Once you overcome that, the next time that happens, and, you know, I don't want to say it gets easier, but you get more capable of dealing with it. It's part of the process of growing up and maturing. Adversity makes us stronger. That's kind of the best way to look at it. Anyway, I think that was all we had today. We're going to take a quick break, come back, and we'll get your closing thoughts.
All right.
We'll be right back.
Alright, so I just wanted to let everyone know that loneliness is something that's going to happen to all of us no matter who we are. You can be the most outgoing, extroverted person, and you're still going to eventually feel lonely. And the best thing to take away from this is that you shouldn't give up on it. If you do feel as though you have chronic loneliness or are experiencing long-term symptoms of loneliness, yes, go and seek help, because there is a way to deal with it. You're not going to immediately feel better, and it's going to sting for a while, but you're going to find alternative ways of thinking and alternative ways to heal, and eventually you'll come back stronger.
Very good. Sage words, as always. That was it for today. Before we do go, I would want to once again invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Teens. You can find video and audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Things. We're on every place you can get a podcast. I'm not even going to list them. I would also invite you to write in, give us your feedback, tell us how we're doing, give us suggestions on what you'd like us to talk about. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can hit us on Twitter at insights_things. We do stream 5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. You can find high-res versions of our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Or you can get links to all that and more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com. And
And don't forget to check out our other two podcasts, Insights into Entertainment, hosted by you and Mommy, and Insights into Tomorrow, our monthly podcast, hosted by you and my brother Sam.
That's it. Another one in the books.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 145, Body Insecurities. I am your host, Joseph Whalen, and my secure and open-minded co-host, Madison Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today, Maddie?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing okay. So you had a little bit of a shake-up to your schedule last week, right? What happened?
I had gotten in contact with a student who had contracted COVID, so out of caution, you decided to quarantine me for 5 days.
And today was your first day back in school, right?
Yep.
How'd that go?
Fine for the most part.
Up until 7th period, right?
Yes, 7th period was when I started losing my sanity and realizing that I didn't really like being back all that much.
Well, yes, it's you don't realize you dislike people until you're around a lot of people that are annoying, right?
Yeah, but like that, even before, they felt like way more annoying this time, so.
Well, you'll get used to it, I'm sure. So, but anyway, today we're talking about body insecurities. Teenagers often face significant pressure to meet strict, unrealistic, and harmful ideals around beauty, weight, and shape. The quest for a, quote, perfect body or appearance can take a heavy toll on a teenager's confidence. What's the matter? We have a cat. Wonderful. The quest for a perfect body or appearance can take a heavy toll on a teenager's confidence as well as their physical and mental health. In today's episode of Insights into Teens, we'll talk about what you can do to help your child develop and maintain a healthy body image and self-esteem. Before we do that, though, I would, as usual, invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Teens. You can also find video and audio versions of the podcast listed as Insights into Things. And you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, and pretty much any place you can get a podcast these days. I would also invite you to reach out to us, give us your feedback, give us your show suggestions. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can find us on Twitter at insights_things. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast. We're also on Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings. Or you can find links to all these and more on our official website at insightsintothings.com. Are we ready?
Yes, we are.
Here we go. So what is body insecurity? This definition comes to us from medicalnewstoday.com. They say body insecurity is the product of a negative body image. Body image refers to how an individual sees their own body and how attractive they feel themselves to be. Many people have concerns about their body image. These concerns often focus on weight, skin, hair, or the shape or size of a certain body part. However, body image does not only stem from what we see in the mirror. A range of beliefs, experiences, and generalizations also contribute. Throughout history, people have given importance to the beauty of the human body. Society, media, and social media, as well as popular culture, often shape these views, and this can affect how a person sees their own body. However, popular standards are not always helpful. Constant bombardment by media images can cause people to feel uncomfortable about their body, leading to distress and ill health. It can also affect work, social life, and other aspects of life. So before we go on, let me just ask you: have you ever experienced negative body images, or do you feel a certain societal pressure to look a certain way?
I mean, yeah, I think probably most people have probably felt that way. I've definitely noticed that society has its like views of what the perfect male and female body is. And like I guess it like getting actual like research on this made me realize that that kind of body is incredibly unrealistic, and I guess it helped me to like not have as hard of body of negative body image as I know most people probably have, but I still have like issues with my own body, but like at the same time I know like I shouldn't really be comparing myself to what the media says is beautiful. I kind of just unanimously accept the fact that I'm not going to be like that.
Yeah, it's funny. I think once people realize how unrealistic and how unobtainable this idealistic body image is, once you understand that it's just a fiction, it makes it a little bit easier to accept yourself for who you are and not force you to try to live up to this unrealistic means. I really think, and of course, coming from somebody my size, it's hard to kind of take this with a grain of salt. But I think if you are happy and healthy, that's really the most important thing. I think living for someone else, whether it's body image or how you act or what you do in life, anytime that you live your life for somebody else, it's probably not the healthiest type of attitude. Nor is it the healthiest type of relationship if you're altering yourself or your body to please somebody else.
Yeah.
So what is negative body image?
So, a person with negative body image feels dissatisfied with their body and their appearance. The person may compare themselves with others and feel inadequate when doing so, feel ashamed or embarrassed, lack confidence, feel uncomfortable or awkward in their body, see parts of their body, such as their nose, in a distorted way, and in some cases, having a negative body image can lead to the development of mental health issues like depression. A person may also pursue unnecessary surgery, unsafe weight loss habits such as crash dieting, or an inappropriate use of hormones to build muscles. There's a strong link between eating disorders and negative body image. Some people develop body dysmorphic disorder, or BDD. A person with BDD sees a part of, or all of their body in a negative way. They may ask for cosmetic surgery to correct their nose size, for example, when to anyone else it appears normal.
So can you think of anybody that you know, or I'll even extend this to any celebrities that you're aware of, who may have done cosmetic surgery to an extreme to try to change the way that they look?
I'm not gonna lie, I'm guessing that, I don't entirely think there's really too many people that come to mind. I really only know, maybe one person that's done it.
Someone you know or a celebrity?
The thing is,
Because I'll tell you, the first one that comes to mind when I think of that question is Michael Jackson. Michael Jackson had gone through so many plastic surgeries on his face, specifically his nose, that if you look at a picture of Michael Jackson from the 80s and one from shortly before he passed away, he looks like literally a completely different person. And I never really understood what would drive you to that, because we're not just talking about, weight loss being where your body insecurities. There are people that have complete changes to their body, and a lot of times it's people as they get older, they want to have the proverbial nip and tuck here, a facelift here, or get rid of the wrinkles here or liposuction here so that they can maintain that youthful look, especially when we're talking about the entertainment industry. And unfortunately, even more so, women in the entertainment industry, because the entertainment industry has a tendency of typecasting women of a certain age, and it limits the roles that they can get. So these women feel compelled professionally to alter their bodies in a way to look younger and more fit in order to get a better selection of roles. Even that is a body insecurity thing, but that's an artificially created body insecurity thing by the industry.
Yeah.
So physically altering yourself, aside from just not liking how your body looks, is another form of that body insecurity.
Yeah.
So where does negative body image come from, you might wonder? A body image does not develop in isolation. Culture, family, friends, they all convey positive and negative messages about the body. The media, your peers and family members can all influence a person's body image. They can encourage people, even from a young age, to believe that there's an ideal body. The image is often an unnatural one. The fashion industry also sets an unhealthy example when they employ underweight models to display their products. Discrimination based on race, size, ability, gender orientation, and age also play a role. Exposure to daily microaggressions at work and in society can cause people to feel that they don't measure up or that they are somehow lacking. One of the trends that you've seen fairly recently in the fashion industry is you see people in the fashion industry modeling clothes and so forth that are not this pencil thin idea of a model. You're seeing, more curvy models come out there, which is good because it's not just skinny people that buy clothes, right?
Yeah.
People of size and people with curves want to be able to see what these things look like on people like them.
Yeah, and I guess I can kind of give an example in a way of, the age when it comes to, the fashion industry and how that's not really being entirely represented. I remember when I was going through the preteen years, it was kind of hard to find clothes. It was around the point where it's okay, I'm not really wearing kids' clothes, but I'm also not really wearing adult clothes. And, it was kind of hard to find clothes my size because there wasn't really a defined tween section.
Right.
And, I found it kind of difficult to find clothes because, you don't really see too many tweens advertising clothing.
Well, and also part of that problem is that your body is changing so rapidly in that time period as you're going through puberty that you're growing in spurts here and there, and what you buy today might not fit you in a week or two from now. You just don't know. You don't know how your body's going to develop like that. So trying to find clothes is a problem. Trying to keep clothes that fit and that fit well, because what happens is you may eventually find the clothes, but they only fit well for a short period of time, and then they're not comfortable anymore, right?
Yeah, and maybe if they could find ways of getting more accessible clothing for those sizes.
Yeah.
That's definitely something that I kind of realized, that was one of the struggles of being a tween, because you don't know if you're really wearing kid clothing or, older clothing.
And that type of, I wouldn't say indecision, but that type of quandary that you run into can fuel body insecurity as well. Because you wonder, am I strange? Is this unusual? Why is this happening to me? Why is it so difficult for me to get clothes? What's wrong with my body? And it's not that there's anything wrong with you. It's perfectly natural. It's just what the body goes through during that stage of development. But because of the struggles you run into trying to find clothes that are comfortable that you like, that fuels body insecurities as well. What else fuels body insecurities?
Illness and accidents can also have an impact. Skin conditions.
Mastectomy?
mastectomy, or breast cancer, or limb amputation can cause people to rethink how they appear to themselves and to others. All these factors can impact a person's mental health and physical well-being. Studies have suggested that females who have a greater resilience, linked to family support or general satisfaction, coping strategies, fitness, and well-being, are more likely to have a positive body image. This suggests that emotional insecurity may also contribute to a negative body image. Body despairing conversations include fat talk, which refers to when people talk about how fat they look or feel. These conversations can lead to further negative feelings, low mood, or negative eating patterns.
Yeah, and that's a great example of the fact that body insecurity isn't just something confined to teens. It's something that occurs all throughout life at different ages. And the illness and accidents impact, the first thing that comes to mind when I think of that is, soldiers that come back from active duty might have had situations where they were injured in combat. You might have scars, you might have lost limbs, and all of that causes body insecurity as well. So there's all kinds of effects, there's all kinds of factors that affect body insecurity, and it's not confined to just the teenage years, right? Mm-hmm. Fat talk, okay? So I'm one who tends to use self-deprecating humor to diffuse situations a lot. I'm fat. I know I'm fat. I'm okay with that. I stopped having body insecurity images a long time ago because I got sick and tired of worrying about what other people think about me. So I'm perfectly comfortable making jokes about it. For me, it's a lot easier to make a joke about it and diffuse the situation before somebody else has an opportunity to make a joke about it. Because once you say it, it's out there and it's open and they can't say anything at that point in time. So for me, that's kind of the route that I take. But it's not that I'm obsessed over, yes, I probably should lose weight. I should probably get in better shape, et cetera, et cetera. You know what? At this age, I'm not going to change. I've accepted that. And, for better or worse, that's just the way things are. But when you do it to people who haven't reached that, I don't want to say enlightened point, but that, we'll say indifference. When someone hasn't reached that level of indifference, it can have a serious mental effect on them. People think of that when you start talking about things like that, and it scars people. It scarred me for a long time when people would make jokes and stuff like that. And you kind of have to think of the effect that it's going to have before you say something like that to someone. And it's not just fat talk. I mean, if somebody has an unattractive smile or, an unattractive nose, or their ears may be a little bit larger than others, when you say stuff like that, like I think about, when I was a kid in high school and, some of the jokes that I would crack because everyone else was saying, it's like, you come to a point where you realize the effect that has on people. And if you don't feel bad for inflicting that on someone, then I think there's probably something wrong that you need to see some kind of professional help for. Because anytime you willingly try to hurt someone like that, it's not a good thing.
Yeah.
And it's important to understand that these types of things, even though you may not think that you have body insecurity images, and you may think that it's just a joke, that joke could have significant impact on somebody else. Mm-hmm. So it's important to keep those types of things in mind. So let's take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll talk about the causes of negative body image.
Alrighty.
We'll be right back. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're talking about body insecurities. And now we're going to talk about the causes of negative body image. And this comes to us from mayoclinic.org. So, maintaining a normal and healthy body image during adolescence, a period of major physical and emotional changes, can be difficult. Okay, that was a really drawn.
You got that?
thing.
Yeah, they kind of describe what that part of adolescence was.
Yeah. Factors that might harm a teenager's body image include natural or expected weight gain and other changes caused by puberty, peer pressure to look a certain way, social media and other media images that promote the ideal body as fit, thin, or muscular and encourage users to aspire to unrealistic and unattainable body ideals, having a parent who's overly concerned about his or her own weight or her child's weight or appearance, or seeing material in which a teen is seen as a thing for other sexual use rather than an independent thinking person, more commonly referred to as sexual objectification.
So if you think about when you were going through puberty, the 12 to 14 year range there, you were having, well, one of the things that you had were you would go through growth spurts and you'd get joint pain a lot when you went through that. That wasn't really something that was visible to the outside, but the effect of that, your legs were getting much longer. Your arms were getting much longer. It took you a little while to get used to those body changes. You might have been a little bit gangly. You might have been a little bit less coordinated than you were before as you came into those dimensions, those refined body dimensions. And that's one of those things that they talk about here, where it's not just the weight gain, it's the actual physical changes that your body's going through, that you're learning how to use your body now, right? How would it have made you feel if you had someone who was picking on you about that? Oh, look at Stretch there because she's, sprouted up 4 inches since the last time we saw her. Like, what effect would that have on your mentality and your development?
I guess it would make me feel pretty insecure about it, and I would try my best to try hiding it. Maybe I'd be scrouching down more,
right.
Or whenever I would feel the pain, I would just not mention it.
Yeah. And the other thing that you run into is you have parents who are obsessive to the point of unhealthiness about body weight. My brother was like this with his kids, where if he saw that his daughter had a little bit of a belly on her while she was, going through this evolution period of youth, he would get, you need to start exercising. You're not allowed to have snacks, blah, 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 this and that. And that weight gain is a natural thing because your body takes on more calories as it's going through these growth spurts.
Yeah.
And you carry that weight differently. How did mommy and daddy do? Did we come across as being overly concerned about that type of stuff?
Not really. Basically, it was actually me who first brought it up because, I started to notice that, I was kind of thin as a kid, and when I started realizing I was kind of growing a stomach, I kind of started feeling a bit insecure. But then you guys started coming at me with the facts, saying that, oh, your body just needs more calories, and it's kind of natural basically, like, your body needs food in order to grow, and that's why you have more weight. And it started to make more sense to me, and then I realized that, okay, it's more logical to think of it that way, and related to just my overall body weight, despite the fact that there have been instances where I say, oh, well, I'm not really very thin, or, like, I kind of have some weight to me. You guys would kind of, like, say that, like, that's fine, and, like, neither of you would call me fat.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, we really kind of trusted the guidance of your pediatrician. And you remember when you would go to your pediatrician, they would give these numbers. Oh, she's in this certain percentile. She's in this percentile. Remember they would say stuff like that?
Yeah.
And that's just an average measurement. That's them making sure that you're not out of bounds of any of the expectations. And as long as each checkup you went, you were within what they expected, you weren't coming out of that range of where you should be, there was no reason for us to be concerned because it was all normal. There's a certain variance that happens because you do put on weight and the weight comes off and then you grow and you go through growth spurts, but it's different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So there isn't, you need to be X number of pounds by certain age, or you need to be X number of pounds per every inch that there's nothing like that. But what they have are kind of generalized percentiles that they drop you into. And as long as you sort of follow those patterns, then you're doing just fine. And you always were within the acceptable parameters there, and there was nothing for us to worry about. So Mommy and I tried not to obsess over. But if there was ever anything that you had questions about or concerns about, we tried to answer those concerns for you. How do you feel now? Do you have any body insecurities now that are, causing you issues or anything?
Well, I guess I probably am not as worried about my weight anymore because, again, it's like knowing about the unrealistic expectation that it's never going to happen that the media, like, proposes. And also now I'm realizing that there's nothing really wrong with having a little weight to you. In fact, if you're gonna be trapped on an island with someone who has the ideal body weight, technically you're more than likely going to survive longer.
Well, that is true.
If you actually have weight to you.
That is true. And the other thing you have to keep in mind is your level of activity differs over the year, right? Over the course of the calendar year. So wintertime, you're not going to be as active as other people. Summertime kicks in, you're going to get much more active. Marching band's going to kick in, you'll be even more active. And you'll go through this period. So the weight that a couple of pounds you might put on over the winter, you're going to work that all off anyway as your activity patterns change. Mm-hmm. And everybody's activity patterns are going to be different. But as long as that average kind of works itself out throughout the year, then you're perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
So what influences teen body image? This comes to us from NewportAcademy.com. Research shows that childhood and teen body image is shaped by many factors. Therefore, body image influences include the following. Your psychological makeup. Studies show that body image dissatisfaction does not exist in a vacuum. Thus, mental health influences body image and vice versa. Hence, children and teens with negative body image are more likely to experience feelings of anxiety, depression, and a lack of control. You also have family environment. Girls whose parents express concern about their weight have lower body esteem and feel less physically able. Moreover, parents' body image influences children. Thus, a study looked at young children with mothers who expressed dissatisfaction with their bodies. And the researchers found that these children are more likely to have a negative body image.
Your peers also play a factor. In addition, peer attitudes and judgments impact teen body image. That includes older and younger peers. For example, one study found that 5th and 6th graders attending schools with older students reported more negative body image. This was accompanied with same-aged girls in school with only younger students. There's also larger societal and cultural norms. Research on American teens finds that racial and ethnic backgrounds influence body image issues. In general, white middle-class girls are most likely to have eating disorders. Asian American teens express high rates of body dissatisfaction, and the unrealistic thin ideal perpetuated by the media seems to hold less sway among African American teens. And finally, you have celebrity images. The negative effects of media on teenage body image are well documented. The Ideal to Real Body Image survey found that 80% of teen girls compare themselves to images they see of celebrities. Moreover, among those girls, almost half said that celebrity images make them feel dissatisfied with the way they look.
Now, that last bit is kind of interesting because you hear a lot of talk about celebrity body images. We talked already about the fashion industry. Are there any celebrities out there that you think have an influence over your own body image that you might look at as a example of what you want to be or where you should be or anything like that?
I've tried not to really compare myself to celebrities all that much, but I have noticed that, like, a lot of these female celebrities most of the female celebrities I've seen, especially when me and Mommy watch, like, the entertainment news and such, a lot of them have the traditionally ideal feminine body, as well as wearing outfits that, show off those bodies. And, a lot of the times I'm kind of just thinking how that's not really normal. And, like, I guess I can definitely see how it plays a large factor into why people, like, have body image issues, seeing so many celebrities with these hourglass bodies in a way. And I'm pretty sure when I was younger, I probably noticed this and kind of wished, oh, I wish I kind of looked like that. And obviously at that time, I didn't really know the fact that that was completely unrealistic.
Yeah. What about your peers? Well, that was one of the things that I think probably as a youth I found had the most influence over most of the, image issues or the, what you wanted to aspire to be. It was mostly peers, the kids you were in school with. They were the ones that you kind of, if you were fashion conscious, you got your fashion sense from your friends. If you were body conscious, you got it from the people that you were associated with. I mean, let's face it, you get into the locker room and you have to change for gym. You can't help but be self-conscious of your body, regardless of what it looks like at that point in time. So do your peers play an influence over what your body image of yourself is?
I mean, I can definitely kind of see that. Like, I have my own style, and, like, I haven't seen, most of my friends don't entirely bring up my body all that much, although there was this one instance where, like, my one older friend was kind of talking about, like, kind of presenting your way, like, my one friend is kind of interesting. They, like, have, like, certain ideas of how people kind of act, and, like, at one point he was talking about, how I was sitting with my other female friend who, to be fair, we have pretty different styles, and they were, my other friend was saying, like, how if I, kind of had more of a demeanor similar to my one friend, I might be, like, more positive, because it was around a time where I was kind of, like, not feeling too happy about the day, and, like, he was saying, like, how, my one friend, like, has a certain demeanor to her look to where, like, she's happier with it, and, like, if I was more if I was more expressive in that way, like, maybe I'd feel happier, and I don't know. It didn't really make me too insecure. It's just like, okay, why should I care about that? But, like, it's only been brought up a couple times, not enough to where I really take too much notice to it, and not enough to where it's really been too insecure, but I can definitely, it's there.
Right. And at the age that you're in, it's kind of hard not to be there. But as long as it's not having an overriding effect or an uncomfortable influence, I think, and it sounds like it's not, I don't think it's really that much of a problem.
Yeah.
I think we're going to take our last break, and then we're going to come back and talk about the benefits of positive teen body image.
Alrighty.
We'll be right back.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back. Today we're talking about body insecurities. And now we're going to talk about the benefits of positive teen body image. So, young people who cultivate a more positive teen body image experience important benefits. Positive teen body image leads to changes in several areas. This includes improved self-esteem and well-being. Feeling better about one's body contributes to a positive outlook and self-confidence. Increased self-acceptance. A positive body image means that teens are more accepting of their bodies and how they look, as well as healthier behaviors. Teens who experience body satisfaction are more likely to practice self-care. That includes eating well, getting more sleep, and exercising at a healthy level.
So here are some tips to improve your body image. And these will help you feel more positive about your body. Spend some time with people who have a positive outlook. Practice positive self-talk with saying things like, "My arms are strong," rather than "My arms are flabby." You can wear comfortable clothes that look good on you. Avoid comparing, as you said already, avoid comparing yourselves to other people. Remember that beauty is not just about appearance. Appreciate what your body can do, such as laughing, dancing, and creating. Be actively critical of media messages and images that make you feel as if you should be different. Make a list of 10 things you like about yourself. See yourself as a whole person, not an imperfect body part. Do something nice for your body, such as getting yourself a massage or a haircut. Instead of spending time thinking about your body, start a hobby. Become a volunteer or do something else that makes you feel good about yourself. Aim for a healthier lifestyle, which might include eating a varied and nutritious diet. And really, the gist of all this is kind of focus on the things that are good about you. Focus on the things that you like about your body. Focus on what you can do. Can I exercise? Can I be more active? Can I eat better? Can I go to bed at an earlier time to get more sleep? Will that help? All these things can help you improve your body image. But the overall idea here is accept yourself for who you are. Emphasize the good stuff. You're a wonderful artist. You're a brilliant mind. you're topping your class in algebra, like things like that. People tend to fixate on the physical appearance side of things when the person is much more than just what they look like on the outside. I'm a big fan of, beauty is you can't judge a book by its cover. Beauty is on the inside that counts. So focus on the things that are more important. Now, there are certain signs that, your teen might have negative body image, and it's important to keep those in mind and be able to recognize those. Why don't you tell us about those?
And these come from
NY Metro Parents.
NY Metro Parents, thank you. I didn't know how I was going to say that, but thank you. So, in general, there are several red flags parents should be aware of when it comes to body image and disorders. Teens who are struggling with body image may cover up certain body parts, make increasingly negative comments about specific body parts, including talking about surgery to change their bodies, have decreased interest in school, hanging out with friends and other activities, spend significant time scrutinizing themselves in the mirror or refuse to look in the mirror, avoid looking at pictures of themselves or being photographed, or have an increased irritability or other changes in mood. Parents should also take note if their teenager abruptly cuts out certain foods from their diet they were previously eating, such as dairy, meat, or carbs, or begins paying significant attention to calories or grams of fat. Eating disorders are often preceded by dieting.
If parents have concerns, a crucial first step, as we always tell you, is to seek out a mental health professional who has expertise in supporting teens with developing a positive body image and a healthy relationship with food and exercise. Sometimes it might be difficult for a teen to open up to a parent, but they might trust an external source more. Parents can also turn to their doctor or a pediatrician or reach out to a nonprofit group that can provide resources. Experts caution against I can't say that word.
Just look in the notes.
Yeah, just look in the notes. I should have written the phonetic pronunciation out. Experts caution against comments teenagers make about their bodies. Now I'm all flustered. For example, if your teen says, "I hate my stomach," don't jump to conclusions. This is first and foremost an opportunity for the parent to start a conversation with their teen. And as always, if you have concerns for your child that you don't feel you're capable or qualified to cope with, always seek the assistance of a qualified professional. And I think that's kind of the safest advice that we can give here. There are signs to look for, and you definitely want to be proactive about this. You don't want to miss the red flags, first of all. Mm-hmm. And you certainly don't want to let it go on too long, because it's one of those things that if it goes on too long and it isn't corrected, it can cause serious health issues. Yep. So we're going to take a very quick break. We'll come back and we'll get your closing thoughts.
Alrighty. Alright, so to everyone out there, I just wanted to say that body insecurities should be taken seriously and should hopefully be corrected. Now, I just wanted to also say that it's perfectly fine if your body doesn't fit any ideals that other people have. Most of the time, the ideal body is not at all realistic and will never be able to happen. Please use some of the tips we offered, and if it comes down to it, please go and seek professional help. And I guess I'm just going to give you a little bit of help. Just know that if you do have a bit more weight than someone else, just think that you're going to be able to survive longer on an island without food.
All right. Yay for the zombie apocalypse side of things.
Yay.
All right. I think
you never know. It might help.
You know what? That's certainly a fair way to look at it. especially with today's, situation. You never know.
Yeah.
That is all we had today. Before we do go, I would once again encourage folks to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Teens. You can also find video and audio versions of the podcast listed as Insights into Things. We are available on Pandora, Castro, Stitcher, Podbean, Buzzsprout, Amazon, and any place you can get a podcast. I would also encourage you to reach out to us, give us your feedback and your show suggestions. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. We do stream 5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. You can find high-res versions of all of our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. You can find audio versions of this podcast on the web at podcast.insightsintoteens.com. Video versions can be found at podcast.insightsintothings.com, or you can get links to all those and much more on our official website at insightsintothings.com. And you.
And don't forget to check out our other two podcasts, Insights and Entertainment, hosted by you and Mommy, and Insights into Tomorrow, our monthly podcast, hosted by you and my brother Sam.
And that's it. Another one in the books.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Talking to real teens about real teen problems. Explore issues from braces to puberty, social anxiety to financial responsibility. Each week, we talk about the topics concerning today's youth. We look at how the issues affect teens, how to cope with these issues, and how parents, friends, and loved ones can help teens handle these challenges. Check out our video episodes on youtube.com/insightsintothings. Catch our audio versions on podcast.insightsintoteens.com or on the web at insightsintothings.com. Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network.
Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 144, Teen Crushes. I'm your host, Madison Whalen, and my co-host, Joseph Whalen.
Hello, Maddie. How you doing today?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
I'm doing okay. Kind of a rough end of the day at work today, but other than that, I think I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I've been doing fine so far today.
Good. Good week so far?
Yeah, I have now gotten my AutoCAD certification.
Congratulations.
Just need to print it out.
Just need to print it. That, it's legit when you got to print it out yourself.
Yeah.
Well, good for you. Good for you. Maybe we can get you a job this summer then.
Hopefully. Well, yeah. Well, with marching band, we might want to be careful, but
Okay, well, maybe not this summer then.
We'll figure it out.
I'm sure we will. Anyway.
That's not what we're talking about today.
No, it's not.
So, we're going to be talking about teen crushes today.
Yes, we are.
So, having crushes can be a wonderful, scary, fun, and heartbreaking experience. When you get your first crush, you may feel confused about what's happening. You may have never had these feelings before. On today's episode of Insights into Teens, we'll talk about what crushes are, the risks associated with them, the importance they play in adolescent development, and ultimately, how to help your teen handle rejection associated with them.
Because we always assume crushes end in rejection, right?
I mean, yeah. But first, I'd like to invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio versions of the podcast listed as Insights into Teens. You can also get both video and audio versions of the podcast listed as Insights into Things. We can be found on pretty much any podcast service like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, and pretty much any other place. We would also like to invite you to contact us, give us your feedback, tell us what we're doing.
Well, we know what we're doing. Tell us how we're doing.
Tell us how we're doing. I'm sorry. Tell us how we're doing. Send in your suggestions for topics you'd like us to address, even topics you don't want us to address, Any feedback's welcome. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can hit us on Twitter at insights_things. You can find high-res videos on YouTube at youtube.com/insightsintothings. We stream 5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. You can get audio versions at podcast.insightsintoteens.com. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast. We're on Instagram at instagram.com/insightsintothings. Or you can get links to all of these and more on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Okay.
Are we ready?
I think we are.
So what are teenage crushes? And this comes to us from psychologytoday.com, which I'm pretty sure we've used in the past.
Indeed.
So teenage crushes have a significant role to play in the journey of adolescence. There are 3 types of crushes, 2 of which we'll look in further detail, which are identity crushes, romantic crushes, and celebrity crushes. In the cases of identity and romantic crushes, the teenager feels smitten.
Smitten, yes.
Okay.
You wrote it. You can't pronounce it?
Yeah. The teenager feels smitten by a compelling person who captivates their attention for good and ill. The celebrity crush shapes ideals and stirs fantasies, but there is usually no interpersonal contact to play them out. However, this is definitely where the market for celebrity posters comes in to decorate teenage bedroom walls.
Nice.
In all 3 cases, the young person largely projects onto another person idealized attributes the admirer highly values and wants to be associated with. They attach strong positive feelings to the perfectly wonderful image that has been created. Crushes have more to do with fantasy than with reality, and they tell much more about the admirer than the admired. This is because they usually prove unrealistic, that in a relatively short time they soon wear off. But it is because of the idealization that crushes have such a momentary power. Momentary power. This is why parents need to respect an adolescent crush and not dismiss or put it down. After all, it is an early approximation of love. While it lasts, it is seriously held, so it should be seriously treated.
Boy, it's like the Star Wars script. Carrie Fisher had once remarked about the original Star Wars script. You can write this stuff, but you can't read it, right? It's okay. You did a fine job there. So crushes themselves are, as they say here, they're idealizations. It's really not a reality. And you're kind of projecting on the person or the subject that you're having a crush on. Have you ever had any crushes on anyone?
I mean, I guess I'll be completely honest. I haven't had any recent crushes, but yeah, there have been people I've had crushes on.
Now, did you ever tell them that you had a crush?
Most of the time, no. It was only really 2 instances.
Okay. Now, as a kid, there were 3 instances I could say that I had a crush. And one, it really wasn't even a crush because it was like kindergarten. And it was one of those things where it was almost a peer pressure type thing. Like, oh, you're supposed to, like this person, or you're supposed to do a certain thing. And, I liked this one girl in kindergarten, and her and I remained friends all through school. And we actually started dating in high school, but it wasn't anything. I don't think it fit into most of these categories here. I think most of my crushes wound up happening probably your age or a little bit older, somewhere in that 10th, 11th, 12th grade type range, where it's one of those things that there's a certain, expectation of what you're supposed to have as a relationship type thing. And a lot of it's really kind of imposed on you by society or by your friends. Have you ever felt pressured to have that kind of crush by, your friends at school or anything?
I mean, kind of. Obviously not intentionally, but I definitely think, I was kind of, looking back at the crushes I have now, I think a lot of it was, I wasn't really attracted to this person because looking back, at least 2 of the people I had crushes on, they weren't really good people, and I didn't really have good reasons for having crushes on them. Again, dealing more with fantasy as opposed to reality when it comes to crushes.
Right.
But I think it was a lot of the time, I was kind of expected to have a crush, and I didn't really realize that until I ended up it was like 6th grade, I had like my last crush, and I'm like, okay, you know what, I'm not doing this. And then I started realizing that there was a lot of pressure, and I think being around certain friends who, I will be honest, are kind of boy crazy, kind of made me think, am I bad for not really having, kind of made me realize, there's a lot of pressure on younger people to kind of have crushes because it's kind of expected and it's natural feelings and such.
Right. Yeah, and I can say that probably the first real crush I had was in 6th grade, and it happened to be, we had 2 different elementary schools that we had in my town, and I was part of the safety patrol. And this other person that I didn't even know existed went to the other school. And we wound up all going to Washington, D.C. on a field trip for the safety patrol. And it wasn't until then that I even knew that these other kids from this other school even existed. Now, we kind of knew we'd be meeting new kids when we got to the junior high the next year. And this was kind of a chance for us to do a meet and greet. And I happened to develop a crush on this trip with her and wanted to get to know her more, but never had a chance to. She lived in a different town than I did. We were bused to the school district. So I knew I wasn't going to have a chance. And my only hope was that I'd have a chance in junior high. So in junior high, we had to take our first year of foreign language. And I didn't know anything about foreign language, but I found out from a friend of mine that this particular girl was going to be in French class. So I said, all right, well, I'll take French class. Everything that I heard about it was, well, nobody ever takes French class. There's only ever one class. Everyone takes Spanish or they take German, and there's 3 or 4 classes. So great, this is my chance to get to know her. I'll be guaranteed to get her in one of my classes. So I'll take French class. Now, that year, a lot of people took French class, and they split a class into 2, and she wasn't in my class. So it never really worked out. But like the next year or so, I wound up getting her, I think, in my English class or something. And I became friends with her. And we started to hang out, but just as friends. And I had gone over to her house at one point in time and met her parents and everything. And it just turned out that we weren't interested in each other from anything other than a friendship. And it never went anywhere. But it was really funny how big of a crush I had on her right up until the time I got to spend time with her and realized, okay, well, she's not what I thought she was, but she's a cool person. She's fun to hang out with, and that was about it. So it was that projection, that ideal of what I wanted that person to be. And then when you're finally exposed to them, that's really not who they are.
Yeah.
So you say we're going to talk about two different types of crushes. So we're going to talk about romantic and identity crushes. But before we get to that, you also mentioned celebrity crush. Have you ever had a celebrity crush?
To be fair, I probably did when I was younger, but I didn't realize it. But currently, no.
Okay. See, and I never had a celebrity crush myself. Mommy will joke around that I have a crush on Yvette Nicole Brown, but that's only because I think she's like really cool and she's a very good person inside from her social media and appearances and stuff, but it's not a crush.
Yeah.
All right, so no celebrity crushes. So let's talk about romantic and identity crushes. Identity crushes are formed when your teen finds someone they much admire, want to become like, or treat as a leader or model they are eager to imitate and follow. Romantic crushes are formed by finding someone whom they find powerfully attractive, who they feel excited to be around, and with whom they want to spend a lot of time. Kind of like how I feel about Mommy.
Aww.
In both... Stop.
Just saying.
In both cases, the person with the crush gives enormous power of approval to the object of their crush, like wanting to be liked by them or wanting to be like them, willing to do a lot to get in the other person's good graces. They go out of their way to be around each attachment of this crush. Now, when you had these crushes, did you do anything that you wouldn't normally have done if you didn't have a crush? Did you try to be around the person? Did you try to be seen by the person? One of the things that I think was kind of silly when I had my crushes was I always kind of wanted to be, casually seen by the person. So I'd find out from a friend where she'd be, if she was going to be at the mall or the shopping center, and I would just sort of arrange to be there in this fictional hope that we'd bump into each other and, I'd get a reaction and we could talk and spend time or something like that. Did you ever do anything like that?
I mean, I guess some of the crushes I had, I had already kind of been friends with them. Well, the one instance I was friends with them. The other instance, I really don't know. But, they hung out with us. So... I mean, I guess in the one instance, I might have, tried to be, get them to talk more, or there might have been certain instances. I can't entirely remember too much, but I can definitely see that I would have probably done things that if I didn't have a crush on them, I probably wouldn't have done. But that's really the only case I can really think of, because most of the time I didn't really act upon the crushes, or I didn't really want to be around them because I got nervous around them, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, and I experienced that too. Now, when you had these crushes, did you happen to confess it to your friends or to a mutual friend or anything like that, or did you just sort of keep it to yourself?
I would sometimes mention it to my friends if it was a serious enough crush. Some instances, I kind of kept it, quiet because it really wasn't, a big crush. Other times I have kind of told my friends, and granted, some of my friends have, done the whole teasing thing about it. And I mean, yeah, I kind of would tell my friends, but, I always said I was never really serious too much, except in
Right.
the one instance, but,
Well, I was notoriously passive-aggressive with my crushes. I never wanted to directly engage the person until I had some level of confirmation that they'd be receptive. I had this innate fear of rejection, like a lot of people do. So I would go about it in different ways. I would have a mutual friend. I would let a mutual friend of ours know and kind of hint that I'd want them to drop hints to the other person and kind of feel them out. In hindsight, it's kind of cowardly to do that, and it never worked out. So it was one of those things where this indirect approach just was not a very effective way of trying to convey it. Eventually, it came down to the fact that I had to go and ask this person out on a date, and it takes a lot of courage to muster up the will to do that,
Yeah.
Did the person that you had a crush on ever know that you had a crush on them?
Well, the one person, no, because there was a specific example of them clearly conveying they weren't interested in me, to the point I didn't do it with them. Other times I'd never really even talked to the person, and there were only 2 instances I technically confessed, and only one of them ended up, and the one ended up leading into rejection, and then the very next day, I think, I was grouped up with them in, a project or table or something, and I realized, oh wow, they're not really a nice person.
That's the thing. You run into awkward situations when that information sort of gets out there, but I think once it's out there, it makes it a lot easier to get to know the person who they are, because we do project on them a lot.
Yeah.
So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back and we'll talk a little bit more about romantic crushes. We'll be
Whoop-dee-doo.
right back. Whoop-dee-doo.
Whoop-de-doo.
For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. Today we're talking about teen crushes. And now we're going to dive a bit more into romantic crushes. So there was a great outbreak of romantic crushes and gossip around them in middle school. By this time, early adolescence and the separation from childhood has caused young people to want to act more grown up, and sexual maturity from puberty has motivated them to act more young manly and more young manly and young womanly ways. Since girls tend to enter puberty before boys, they are more likely to experience the wave of crushes first. More drawn to have crushes than boys are, taking romantic feelings seriously that boys might treat lightly or even laughably. However, the time for same-age boys to become romantically smitten is not far off, and when it arrives, a crush proves to be no laughing matter when they become smitten too.
Because a romantic crush is a potent mix of idealization and infatuation, it doesn't require knowing another person well at all. In some cases, a superficial impression can be provocation enough. Things like, I like how they're so quiet and watchful and keep to themselves, which sounds kind of stalkery, when you say it like that.
I mean, yeah.
Or things like, I like how what others think doesn't matter to them. As mentioned, although the crush appears to be about attraction to another person, it's actually about projection of valued attributes onto another person. more or less a statement about what they find attractive. Crushes are very revealing. Teens often have crushes on other teens who seem the opposite of them. A serious teen might have a crush on a more fun-loving teen. Crushes are not only the stuff that dreams are made of, they signify a lot about the dreamer.
So, some risk of romantic crushes. Of course, romantic crushes can have a risky side. You don't want a teenage crush to become a fixation, a young person unable to stop daydreaming and fantasizing about this person, for example. You don't want the young person to act out under the influence of a crush in self-endangering ways, soliciting or expressing inappropriate interest. And you don't want the crush to be exploited by the object of the crush, such as an older adolescent taking advantage of a romantically besotted younger adolescent, for example.
Feelings are always a difficult road for teens to navigate. As teens grow and mature, they experience feelings and emotions they've never felt before. They don't understand these feelings. Sometimes they can't even identify or describe the feelings. This makes it difficult for them to cope with this new and confusing feeling. It also makes it difficult for them to seek out help and advice on how to deal with these things. They often interpret these new feelings through examples they're exposed to. Those examples should be found at home through the guidance of the parents and their guardians. In the absence of that guidance, teens seek out other alternative examples such as peers, the media, and popular fiction, like books, movies, and television. These alternative sources of examples aren't always the healthiest depiction of how those emotions should be handled. Thus, they can lead to more confusion, frustration, and embarrassment for teens.
Because a romantic crush is so intensely felt, parents must not take it lightly or make fun of it. An awakening of romantic feelings, it provokes a lot of anxiety because there are many problematic questions for the young person to answer. Like, what am I supposed to do with these feelings? Should they just be kept secret, thus increasing the risk of obsession, preoccupation? What if I tell close friends? Suppose it get talked about and teased, thus increasing the risk of embarrassment. What if I have to be around other people who don't know how I feel? Now being nervous, there is more risk of doing or saying something awkward. What do I tell this person about my crush? To declare the crush to the person creates the risk of rejection. It is not easy managing a crush.
So you had talked about having crushes, and at least in one of those instances you did feel a certain experience of rejection. How did that feel? How did you cope with that?
To be fair, I somewhat expected it at that point. When I actually confessed, I basically just said, "Hey, I like you," right before I was supposed to leave. I basically just went up saying that I liked them, and then I basically just ran out the door.
Interesting.
So, and again, I really hadn't talked to the person before, so I highly doubted that they actually liked me. So I really wasn't going to be all too surprised in that instance.
Right. Now, I have to tell you, this whole thing that you've had crushes kind of comes as a surprise to me. Not a complete surprise. I mean, it's a normal thing. It's something that we've never talked about as a family. Is there any particular reason we didn't? Did you not feel comfortable talking about it? Is it something you didn't feel you needed to talk about? Why am I hearing about this sort of thing? Not that I'm judging. I'm just curious if it was something. Was it the way that mommy and daddy were behaving that you didn't think you were comfortable talking to us?
Well, I think part of the reason was because none of them really went anywhere. And I didn't really think it was important to mention. And in another case, I guess I was kind of nervous to talk to you about it because the whole thing of, I don't want my little girl to be with a guy because I know that guys are dumb and stuff, and
I see. So it was all my fault. I
mean,
gotcha.
okay. Mommy technically knew more about it, okay? I kind of told Mommy because I thought I'd relate to her more, or she'd relate to me more than you would.
So you were okay talking to Mommy at least?
Mostly, yeah.
Well, I can understand that. I mean, I tend to have a very vocal stance on how protective I am of you, so I can totally understand you not feeling entirely comfortable. I hope by now that's subsided a bit, and I'm a little bit more level-headed about it.